Chapter 56-66. Do you want him alive or dead? Outside the western gate of Black Chilean City, behind Dongyu Shui-er, a young man wearing a guard's uniform walked out. What do you mean, do you want him alive or dead? Dongyu Shui-er looked down the horse in confusion. When she saw who it was, she couldn't help but feel happy. This guy came, Hu Xiaotian was going to be unlucky. If you want him alive, just cripple him. If you want him dead, just kill him. Ji Yufei's clone looked coldly at Hu Xiaotian on the opposite carriage. It had to be said that this Hu Xiaotian was really elegant, and he was also the #1 person in the younger generation of the East Moon Imperial Capital's Hu clan. Moreover, the East Moon Imperial Lord wanted to betroth his most beloved princess to him. This was really like the wind of success. Very soon, he would be the son-in-law of the East Moon Empire. At that time, the Hu clan's position in the East Moon Empire would be even firmer. The Longxiang clan and the Dongxian clan were nothing. In the East Moon Empire, 1 emperor and 3 major clans. This emperor was the East Moon Imperial clan, and the 3 major clans were the East Moon Imperial Capital's Hu clan, Longxiang clan, and the Dongxian clan. Where did this little guy come from? How dare he be so impudent in front of my young master? Hu Qian, who was next to the carriage, immediately pointed at Ji Yufei's clone and roared. Whoosh! Catcher! Then, a pig-slaughtering scream rang out. Everyone looked and saw that Hu Qian's finger and palm that were originally pointing forward drooped down. Hu Qian only felt an intense pain pass into his brain. My hand! Hu Qian's vision darkened from the pain, and his face paled. His right palm and fingers were twisted strangely, and the bones of his fingers and palm were actually crushed. When Hu Xiaotian saw this, his pupils involuntarily contracted when he looked at Ji Yufei's clone. Just now, he only saw a flash, and before he could react, Hu Qian's hand was crippled. He was an expert in the middle realm of Heaven stage, and he could still see the rapidly moving figure of Ji Yufei's clone. Those below Heaven stage couldn't even see the figure of Ji Yufei's clone. What's going on? The surrounding people were dumbfounded. Those who dared to point their fingers at me are all dead. I don't want to kill anyone today. You're lucky. Ji Yufei's doppelganger said indifferently. Hu Qian was furious. Hu Xiaotian's handsome face was darker than the bottom of a pot. Even if you want to beat a dog, you have to look at its owner first. This guard of Dongyu Shui-er was simply too impudent. How could a mere guard be so arrogant? Your Highness, what do you mean by this? Hu Xiaotian was unhappy. What I mean is, hurry up and scram. Dongyu Shui-er sneered. She did not want to marry this guy at all. What #1 of the young generation of the Tiger clan? In her eyes, this guy was just a spoiled brat. This Wang Zhon in front of him was much more pleasing to the eye than Hu Xiaotian. An absurd thought suddenly crossed Dongyu Shui-er's mind, causing her lips to curl into a faint smile. Your Highness, you actually told your fiancé to scram? Hu Xiaotian's voice was extremely cold. He was originally a high and mighty existence, a proud son of heaven. When he was born, he was found to have a heaven-defying root bone by his clan. In fact, Hu Xiaotian's cultivation speed was also far faster than his peers. Such a proud person, how could he stand being looked down upon? Moreover, this person was his future wife. Hu Xiaotian, let me tell you, now that I have captured the sky hegemonic battle god alive, I have made a great contribution. As long as I return to the royal capital, I believe that father will agree to any request I make. Dongyu Shui-er said coldly. What do you want? Hearing this, Hu Xiaotian immediately felt uneasy. What do I want? Don't you know very well? Dongyu Shui-er laughed happily. You think you can escort the sky hegemonic battle god back to the royal capital? Hu Xiaotian sneered. Where is the flying tiger guard? Why haven't you invited your highness to come down and ride the carriage with this princess back to the royal capital? Hu Xiaotian shouted loudly. Yes, sir. In the next moment, countless soldiers wearing flying tiger battle armor rushed over from all directions, surrounding Dongyu Shui-er and the others. Hu Xiaotian, do you really want to rebel? Dongyu Shui-er was shocked. I'm not rebelling, I just want to invite your highness to have a chat with me. Hu Xiaotian said with a fake smile. How could Dongyu Shuai not know what this guy was planning? This guy wants to put me under house arrest, then escort the sky hegemonic battle god back to the royal capital to claim the merit. Sigh. Ji Yufei's doppelganger suddenly sighed. Didn't you say you want to protect me? Now that the situation is dire, why are you sighing? Dongyu Shuai glared at Ji Yufei's clone and said unhappily. Didn't I just ask you if you want him dead or alive? If you wanted him dead, he would already be a corpse. What's the point of talking? Ji Yufei's clone said nonchalantly. He is the number one of the younger generation of the Tiger clan. If he dies, the ancestor of his clan will probably go crazy. Dongyu Shuai rolled her eyes at Ji Yufei's clone. Even the Dongyu royal family was still very fearful of the ancestor of the Hu clan, because the ancestor of the Hu clan was a saint-level existence. In the entire Dongyu Empire, only the ancestor of the Dongyu royal family and the ancestor of the Hu clan were saints. Do you think I'm transparent? The veins on Hu Xiaotian's forehead were throbbing. These two were actually talking about his life and death as if nothing had happened. In Hu Xiaotian's opinion, these two were simply ignoring his existence. So infuriating. He, Hu Xiaotian, was the main character wherever he appeared in the East Moon royal capital, an existence that was the center of attention. Shut up. Ji Yufei's clone and Dongyu Shuai roared at Hu Xiaotian at the same time. Hu Xiaotian was stunned, but in the next moment, he flew into a rage. What are you waiting for? Why haven't you asked the princess to dismount? Hu Xiaotian roared angrily. Orderly footsteps sounded, and the surrounding flying tiger guards formed a military formation, directly pressing towards Dongyu Shuai and Ji Yufei's clone. This flying tiger guard was a personal army controlled by the Tiger clan. Although this flying tiger guard belonged to the East Moon Empire in name, it was actually the private army of the Tiger clan. It couldn't be helped, the Tiger clan of the East Moon imperial capital was just that awesome. There were definitely more than 10,000 flying tiger guards here, and the group under Princess Dongyu only had a few thousand people. It would also take time to mobilize the army in the city. By the time the Black Chilean city's army came to rescue, Dongyu Shuai and the others would already be dead. Your Highness, the strong are respected. You should first think about whether you have the strength to do anything. Hu Xiaotian looked at the anxious Dongyu Shuai and said proudly. You're right, the strong are respected, but who is the strong and who is the weak? Ji Yufei's clone said indifferently. You. Pa. Damn it. Pa. What the hell? Pa. A loud slap sounded, and then everyone looked at Hu Xiaotian with their mouths agape. I'll beat you to death. Ji Yufei's clone suddenly appeared in front of Hu Xiaotian, and then directly gave Hu Xiaotian a round of slaps, making Hu Xiaotian's face look like a pig. Chapter 56-67. Ji Yufei's clone directly slapped Hu Xiaotian a dozen times. Then, the entire world went silent. Everyone was dumbfounded, especially the flying tiger guards, and Hu Gan, whose right hand was broken by Ji Yufei's clone, were all dumbfounded. They watched as their young master, Hu Xiaotian, was beaten into a pig's head. Moreover, this person seemed to be Princess Dongyue's guard. You dare hit me? Do you know who I am? Hu Xiaotian was also stunned by Ji Yufei's clone's slap. Both sides of his face were burning with pain, and when he opened his mouth to speak, he actually spat out a dozen bloody teeth. I say, why are you so ruthless? Dongyu Shuai said gloatingly. There's nothing I can do. Who asked this guy to be so annoying? I couldn't hold it in and hit your future son-in-law. I'm sorry. Ji Yufei's clone shrugged and said as if nothing had happened. Hu Xiaotian was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Young master, are you all right? Hu Gan hurriedly went forward to support Hu Xiaotian, who was on the verge of falling on the carriage. The number one person of the East Moon Imperial City's Hu family was actually slapped in public and turned into a pig's head. Hu Xiaotian was about to go crazy from anger. If those guys in the Imperial City found out, how could he still have the face to stay in the Imperial City? What, my future son-in-law? This guy wants to marry me. Dream on. Dongyu Shuai said coldly. That's right, this toad really isn't worthy of a swan like you. Ji Yufei's clone echoed. Fart. Hearing this, Hu Xiaotian spat out another mouthful of blood. I am Hu Xiaotian, the #1 genius of the Hu family's younger generation, this guy actually called me a toad. If I don't kill you, I won't be surnamed Hu. Ji Yufei's clone had completely offended Hu Xiaotian. But he didn't care at all. Kill him for me. Hu Xiaotian pointed at Ji Yufei's clone with a trembling finger. Haha, Ji Yufei's clone couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. What are you waiting for? Hu Xiaotian was continuously attacked by Ji Yufei's doppelgangers. He was completely enraged. Kill. The tens of thousands of flying tiger guards recovered from their shock and roared at the same time as they charged towards Ji Yufei's clone. A terrifying killing intent filled the entire void. Although the tens of thousands of flying tiger guards could not compare to the divine army under the Overlord Battle God's command, they were still one of the most elite armies in the East Moon Empire. The aura released by the tens of thousands of flying tiger guards was no small matter. Dongyu Shue's expression changed. However, Ji Yufei's clone remained calm. He wasn't faking it. He really didn't care about the tens of thousands of flying tiger guards. What flying tiger guard? In his eyes, they were nothing but chickens and dogs. Hu Xiaotian, since you really want to die, I don't mind fulfilling your wish. After saying that, Ji Yufei's doppelganger instantly disappeared. No, Dongyu Shue was shocked because she knew that Wang Zhong really dared to kill Hu Xiaotian. After all, even the Overlord Battle God was defeated by Wang Zhong. Who was this Hu Xiaotian? Bam! With a muffled sound, the void trembled. Then, the entire carriage shattered. Hu Xiaotian and the people around the carriage were all sent flying by the explosive power. The people on the road were immediately thrown into chaos. Hu Xiaotian tumbled into the grass on the side of the road. At this moment, two figures stood in the air, two fists pressed against each other. Both of their clothes were violently shaking, and both of their hair were fluttering behind them. God level. Ji Yufei's clone stared at the skinny old man in black who suddenly appeared. This guy had been hiding in the carriage and only acted when he was about to kill Hu Xiaotian. Little guy, killing without saying a word. You're quite vicious. The old man's eyes were like lightning. He looked as calm as an old dog, but he was actually extremely shocked inside. When did such a powerful expert appear by Dongyu Shue's side? Who was this guy? There were only a few god-level experts in the East Moon Empire. They could be counted with one hand, but this god-level expert before him was too young. Such a young god-level expert and a new face, this made the old man in black have no choice but to be cautious. After all, there were some people in this world that should never be offended. Although the god level was powerful, it was nothing in the eyes of those super forces. Although the East Moon Empire was very powerful, in fact, in the easternmost pole, there were countless forces that were stronger than the East Moon Empire. Not to mention those super forces on the surface, even those hidden ancient cultivation clans were countless. So, in the easternmost pole, one should not be too arrogant. However, that Hu Xiaotian was still too young. He did things without caring about the consequences and without any scruples. This old man in black was different. How could someone who could cultivate to the god level be an ordinary person? Hehe, you've killed fewer people. Ji Yufei's doppelganger sneered. The killing intent exuding from this black-robed old man was very powerful. Furthermore, he could control it freely. If it weren't for his powerful spiritual will, he wouldn't have been able to sense this fellow's existence. He had long sensed that the old man in black was hiding in the carriage. It seemed like this old man in black was definitely Hu Xiaotian's protector. It had to be said that the East Moon Hu clan really valued Hu Xiaotian, actually sending a god-level expert to protect him. It should be known that god-level experts were also among the top elites in the East Moon Empire. Even the East Moon Imperial Lord did not dare to slight these god-level experts. Kill. The tens of thousands of flying tiger guards continued to press towards Ji Yufei's clone. I'm in a good mood today, so I didn't want to kill, but if someone doesn't know what's good for them and insists on seeing blood, I can't do anything about it. The voice of Ji Yufei's clone turned cold. The old man in black stared at Ji Yufei's clone, bewildered. All of you, back down. The black-robed old man said loudly. Although his voice wasn't loud, everyone present felt their ears ringing. They were indescribably shocked. The tens of thousands of flying tiger guards directly stopped. Jiu Fei's clone and the old man's fist were still pressed against each other. The old man in black slowly retracted his fist. Jiu Fei's clone also retracted his fist. Dongyu Shui, who was so nervous that her heart almost jumped out of her chest, finally sighed in relief. If Wang Zhong and the old man in black fought, it would be a loss for the East Moon Empire no matter who won or lost. Tell your people to move aside. Jiu Fei's clone said indifferently. All of you, move aside. The old man in black directly ordered. The flying tiger guards in front of the escort team immediately moved to the sides. The old man in black seemed to have a very high status, actually being able to command the flying tiger guards. You're Hu Zhenlei, the god of thunder? Dongyu Shui suddenly exclaimed. What? The city lord and the others were all shocked when they heard this. This god of thunder was a big shot, already famous in the East Moon Empire several hundred years ago. Hu Zhenlei was originally a divine general of the East Moon Empire, and was once the general of the East Moon Empire, commanding the three armies of the empire. However, several hundred years ago, for some reason, Hu Zhenlei suddenly quit. He directly resigned from all his official positions and disappeared from everyone's sight. Chapter 56-68. Hu Zhenlei, the god of thunder, was a powerful figure that shook the Dongyu and tyrannical empires hundreds of years ago. However, he suddenly retired when he was at the peak of his life. No one knew what happened back then. Hu Zhenlei had disappeared for hundreds of years, but who would have thought that he would suddenly appear here and become Hu Xiaoqian's Dao protector? I didn't expect this guy to have such a background. In a flash, Jiu Fei's clone appeared beside Dongyu Shui. I didn't expect someone to still remember this old man. Hu Zhenlei glanced at her, a bit surprised. What ability does Hu Xiaoqian have to have senior become his Dao protector? Shui asked curiously. Sigh. Hu Zhenlei didn't say anything and only sighed helplessly. Shui was shocked. Hu Zhenlei clearly had something he couldn't say, but she didn't dare to ask if he didn't want to say. Even though Hu Zhenlei disappeared for hundreds of years, he still had a lot of prestige in the Dongyu Empire. This was because most of the generals of the East Moon Empire had once been Hu Zhenlei's subordinates. Otherwise, how could he possibly command the flying tiger guards? Let's go. We don't want to be late. Jiu Fei's clone told Dongyu Shui. That's right. Shui nodded. The tyrannical empire's army was charging towards Black Qilin City. Their war god was defeated and captured, so they had to save him. Moreover, the tyrannical empire sent over a dozen cultivators from the capital to attack Black Qilin City. These were all powerhouses at the heaven rank or above, and the one leading them was a divine rank powerhouse. These dozen powerhouses of the tyrannical Sky dynasty directly flew over. Even though the capital was far from Black Qilin City, it wouldn't be long before these cultivators arrived. If they didn't leave now, it would be troublesome when these cultivators arrived. Many of the East Moon Empire's spies were hidden in the capital of the Ba Tian Empire, so none of their actions could escape the eyes of the East Moon Empire's spies. Moreover, the overlord of the tyrannical Sky Empire had no intention of hiding it. More than 10 experts of the tyrannical Sky Empire had left the city at the same time. This had already caused quite a commotion in the imperial capital. You want to leave after beating me up? No way. Granduncle, kill this guy for me. At this moment, Hu Xiaoqian rushed out from the grass on the side of the road. He was in an incomparably sorry state as he pointed at Jiu Fei's clone and roared. He didn't have many teeth left and his words were unclear. Young master, Hu Qian and the others hurried forward. All of you, get out of my way. Granduncle, if you don't kill this guy, then I'll die here. Let's see how you're going to explain this to the ancestor. Hu Xiaoqian was already completely driven mad, not hesitating to use his own life to threaten Hu Zhenlei. Young master, this, Hu Gan and the others hurriedly stopped Hu Xiaoqian. TSK, who do you think you are? Jiu Fei's clone said in disdain. You, Hu Xiaoqian was about to go crazy. Granduncle, are you really going to watch me die in front of you? Hu Xiaoqian roared sternly. If you want to die, then hurry up. A second-generation ancestor like you will commit suicide? What a joke. Ji Yufei's clone was even more disdainful. Damn it, even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Hu Xiaotian went crazy and directly sent Hu Gan and the others who were blocking him flying, then pounced towards Ji Yufei's clone. A berserk energy fluctuation exploded from his body. He wants to self-destruct. Dong Yu Shui was shocked when she saw this. This Hu Xiaotian was also a heaven stage ranker. If he self-destructed, the killing power would not be a joke. I say, your fiancé can be considered a ruthless person, Ji Yufei's clone said as he clenched his right hand into a fist, and was about to punch towards Hu Xiaotian. Who cares if he is Hu Xiaotian or Hu Xiaodi? Who cares if he self-destructs or not? If this punch lands, he will die. Ji Yufei's clone would not let this second-generation ancestor get away with it. Are you crazy? Hu Zhenlei bellowed, extended his right hand, and grabbed towards Hu Xiaotian in the air. Hu Xiaotian, who was pouncing towards Ji Yufei's clone, directly flew towards Hu Zhenlei, and was grabbed by the neck by Hu Zhenlei, like a little chick. Don't look at Hu Zhenlei's skinny figure. The tall Hu Xiaotian in his hands was like an eagle catching a little chick. Hu Xiaotian immediately became obedient, because Hu Zhenlei had directly knocked him out with a punch. This kind of second-generation ancestor, why did you save him? Let me send him on his way with a punch, so that he won't cause trouble for your family in the future. Ji Yufei's clone shook his head. Although this Hu Xiaotian's talent was very good, he had never suffered any hardships. His life had always been smooth sailing, and he had never suffered any setbacks. Using the word hedonistic to describe this guy was already an understatement. Arrogant, conceited, and insufferably arrogant. Once this kind of person suffered setbacks, he would not be able to accept it. His mentality would instantly collapse, and he would definitely do incomparably crazy things. No matter how unbearable he is still a direct descendant of the Hu family. I can't just watch him die, Hu Zhenlei said helplessly. He, the direct descendant of the Hu family is only like this. Ji Yufei's clone was very disapproving. Hu Zhenlei did not say anything. Let's go. Dong Yu Shui waved her arms, then took the lead and walked at the very front. The escort team continued forward. Now, no one dared to cause trouble. Even Hu Zhenlei did not make a move, and Hu Xiaotian was taught a lesson by a guard beside Princess Dong Yu. Who dared to cause trouble? The escort team left Black Qilin City in a grandiose manner. There were more than a dozen carriages in the team, and in one of the carriages, Ji Yufei's clone, Wang Zhon's mother and sister were placed. This time, when escorting Dong Yu Shui to the East Moon royal capital, Ji Yufei's clone brought Wang Zhon's mother and sister along. He could not leave them in Black Qilin City. After all, it would not be long before a great war erupted in Black Qilin City again. Ji Yufei's clone had already rearranged the formation for Black Qilin City. Even if the army of the tyrannical Sky Empire came, it would not be so easy to break through Black Qilin City. Moreover, the reinforcements of the East Moon Empire were still stationed in Black Qilin City. Hu Zhenlei, the violent god of thunder, was also guarding Black Qilin City and did not return to the empire. Granduncle, why didn't you kill that guy? In Black Qilin City, Hu Xiaotian's roar came from the mayor's residence. If it were not for me, you would have died God knows how many times. Hu Zhenlei said indifferently. This is what you owe me. Hu Xiaotian said angrily. Hu Zhenlei did not say anything. Hu Xiaotian continued to lose his temper. Very soon, the sound of something being smashed came from the main hall of the mayor's residence. That guy is called Wang Zhon, right? When I return to the royal capital, I will make you beg for death. Ah! Chapter 5669. The news that Hu Xiaotian of the Tiger family of the East Moon Imperial City had been beaten into a pig's head had already spread in Blackscale City. There was also a tiger clan in Black Qilin City, but the Black Qilin City's tiger clan had no relationship with the East Moon Royal Capital's tiger clan. However, this did not stop the Black Qilin City's tiger clan's determination to befriend the East Moon Royal Capital's tiger clan. Black Qilin City's Hu clan's patriarch, Hu Xiaoyu, immediately handed over all the information on Ji Yufei's doppelganger Wang Zhon to Hu Xiaotian. That guy is just a soldier in Black Qilin City. Are you kidding me? Under the big tree in the backyard of the city lord's mansion, next to the stone table, Hu Xiaotian fiercely slammed his palm on the table. Countless cracks appeared on the incomparably hard stone table, as if it could break at any time. How would I dare to make fun of young master? Seeing that Hu Xiaotian was enraged, Hu Xiaoyu was so frightened that he fell to the ground, trembling in fear. The Two Clans clan head too, who was carefully standing at the side, was also extremely shocked. It was hard to imagine that these big shots in Black Chelin City, who could summon the wind and summon the rain, would actually behave like this in front of Hu Xiaotian. Only the city lord of Black Chelin City, Dong Yu Tian, remained calm on the surface, but he was already panicking inside. Although his surname was Dong, he was only a branch of the Dong Yu royal family. Dong Yu Tianxia actually did not have much status in the Dong Yu royal family. Compared to the imperial capitals who clan that held real power, East Moon naturally did not dare to offend them. Of course, Hu Xiaotian didn't dare to do anything to him, the city lord of Black Chelin City. After all, he was also surnamed Dong Yu. Even if he was a branch of the royal family, he was still a member of the royal family. Brother under heaven, is this Wang Zhon really just a small soldier in Black Chelin City? Hu Xiaotian turned to Dong Yu Tianxia and asked. When Dong Yu Tianxia heard this, a cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. This guy actually dared to call me brother? When I made my debut, this brat's father was still playing in the mud somewhere. Of course, Dong Yu Tianxia dared not show any dissatisfaction on the surface. One had to know that Dong Yu Tianxia was only in the heaven realm. Wang Zhon is indeed a small soldier in Black Chelin City. Dong Yu Tianxia nodded. Ha ha. How interesting. Hu Xiaotian's smile was very ugly, because his originally handsome face was still swollen like a pig's head. Then who can tell me why a mere soldier is so strong? Even my granduncle has to admit defeat. Hu Xiaotian gritted his teeth. No one dared to speak. Because no one knew how Wang Zhon suddenly became so powerful, and in such a short period of time. Don't tell me this guy is a descendant of some super clan that has come to play in the world. Hu Xiaotian said angrily. Everyone felt the killing intent from Hu Xiaotian's body. Wang Zhon's family background was very clean. They came from a military family in Black Chelin City. His father and grandfather, who died in battle, were soldiers of Black Chelin City. Hu Xiaotian couldn't understand how someone who had grown up in Black Chelin City, an ant-like soldier, could suddenly become so strong. He was actually bullied by an ant. Hu Xiaotian was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Therefore, he couldn't let this guy called Wang Zhon go. Go and capture Wang Zhon's entire family. Hu Xiaotian roared. Hu Xiaoyu and the others all hesitated. What, you can't even do such a small thing, what do I need you for? Hu Xiaotian was furious. No, young Master Tian, it's not that we can't do it, it's that Wang Zhon's entire family has followed Wang Zhon. Hu Xiaoyu carefully said. Hu Xiaotian was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Could it be that this guy doesn't have any friends in Black Chelin City? Hu Xiaotian laughed sinisterly. Since he couldn't find Wang Zhon's family to vent his anger, then he would find his friends. This daddy will first vent the anger in his chest. However, Hu Xiaoyu and the others still shook their heads. Wang Zhon really didn't have any friends in Black Chelin City, only the Black Tiger took care of him, but this Black Tiger also followed Wang Zhon to the imperial capital. Fuck. Hu Xiaotian was truly angered. This daddy just wanted to find someone to vent his anger on, why was it so difficult? All of you, scram. Hu Xiaotian, who was stunned for a while, suddenly roared at everyone. Yes, yes, yes. Hu Xiaoyu and the two families' leader hurriedly retreated. Dong Yu Tianxia also turned and walked out, but the moment his back faced Hu Xiaotian, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and his expression became very ugly. Wang Zhon, as long as you are in the East Moon Imperial capital, I have a way to let you die. Hu Xiaotian said fiercely. On the big tree behind Hu Xiaotian, a black shadow quietly stood on a branch. He seemed to be one with the surroundings, even a heaven stage expert like Dong Yu Tianxia couldn't sense his existence. He was Hu Xiaotian's protector, the god of thunder, Hu Zhenlei. Sigh. Hu Zhenlei helplessly shook his head. His nephew's breadth of mind was really not good. No matter how talented he was, It would be difficult for him to become a great person. Ji Yufei's clone Wang Zhon, who was gnashing his teeth in hatred from Hu Xiaotian, was currently following the main road towards the East Moon imperial capital. The group of several thousand people was vast and mighty. Black Qilin City was really far from the East Moon imperial capital. With the speed of Ji Yufei's clone, it would probably take several months for them to reach the imperial capital. With the Overlord War God in custody, they couldn't go faster even if they wanted to. In fact, the reason why Ji Yufei's clone was so slow with the Overlord War God was because he had other plans. I say, are there really people coming to rescue the prisoners? Shui, who was riding at the front on a tall horse, suddenly turned around and asked Ji Yufei's clone behind her. There should be. If no one comes to rescue the prisoners, how boring would it be? Ji Yufei's clone looked at the sky and said. It was already dusk, and night would soon fall. They needed to find a place to set up camp. You seem like you can't wait for someone to rescue the prisoners. Shui was speechless. Haha, don't you want to capture a few more influential fellows in the Overlord Heaven Empire to take back for merit? Ji Yufei's clone laughed. Of course I do. Shui blurted out. You really have a good crow's mouth. As Ji Yufei's clone spoke, a tall and ferocious-looking man appeared on the main road ahead. The burly man held a mace that was 3 meters long in his hand. Seeing the mace in the man's hand, all the soldiers couldn't help but change their expressions. Even Shui couldn't help but frown. You're the crow's mouth. As she spoke, Dongyu Shui gave Longxiang Barbarian a look. Dragon Elephant Man immediately urged his horse forward. Chapter 5670. Ji Yufei's doppelganger was a little surprised that someone had come to rescue the prisoners. After all, they had just left Black Qilin City. They originally wanted to use Hegemonic War Immortal to lure out those guys from the tyrannical Sky Imperial Court and then get rid of them. Otherwise, they would not have escorted Hegemonic War Immortal on the road with such great fanfare. The burly man who blocked the way waved the mace in his hand and attacked Dragon Elephant Man. Violent Yuan Qi burst out from his body. This fellow was like a terrifying savage beast. Heaven rank middle realm? Ji Yufei's doppelganger immediately sensed the cultivation of this burly man. These burly guys are all at the heaven rank. Ji Yufei's doppelganger said. Is there anything strange about that? Dongyu Shui said disapprovingly. Not strange. Ji Yufei's doppelganger thought for a moment. This was the limitless realm, where people had a long lifespan. If one's talent was insufficient, they could make up for it with time. Even a pig could become a god in the limitless realm as long as it had enough time. Heaven rank was not god rank. Therefore, in the limitless realm, even a little girl could be an old sister who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Ji Yufei's doppelganger suddenly felt that in the limitless realm, he had to keep a low profile. He could not be as awe-inspiring as he used to be. Just as Ji Yufei's doppelganger was thinking about the importance of keeping a low profile, Dragon Elephant Man had already fought with the burly man who blocked the way to rescue the prisoners. Clang! There was a sound of metal colliding, and the next moment, Dragon Elephant Man was directly sent flying. In just one blow, Dragon Elephant Man was defeated. The mace in the burly man's hand was too terrifying. Everyone was inexplicably shocked. This was a great killing weapon, one touch would injure, and one would die. For a moment, no one dared to go forward. This time, among the generals of Black Qilin City, only Longxiang Man accompanied Dongyu Shui to escort the tyrant war god back to the East Moon royal capital. The other generals remained to guard Black Qilin City. Moreover, in order to curry favor with the Dongyu royal capital's Hu clan, the Hu clan and the Tu clan did not send any experts from their clans to escort Dongyu Shui back to the royal capital. The Hu clan of the East Moon imperial capital was truly very powerful. They were definitely a clan with real power, and they practically controlled the entire army of the East Moon Empire. Moreover, there was an ancestor who had lived for countless years in the East Moon Empire's Tiger clan. No one in the entire East Moon Empire dared to ignore the existence of this ancestor of the Tiger clan. If they could latch onto the thighs of the East Moon imperial capital's Tiger clan, then the Black Qilin City's Tiger clan and Tu clan would immediately soar into the sky. This was a must. In their eyes, This was a real benefit. As for Dongyu Shui, they couldn't wait for her to leave Blackchilin City. It's your turn to perform, Dongyu Shui said to Ji Yufei's clone beside her. What do you mean it's my turn to perform? Can't you do it? Ji Yufei's clone did not want to fight anymore. He wanted to keep a low profile. If he could avoid fighting, he would. There was absolutely no harm in hiding. It was better to be safe than sorry. Me? You actually have the heart to let a girl risk her life against this ferocious-looking man? Dongyu Shui glared at Ji Yufei's clone with her hands on her hips and said fiercely. You're a tough girl. You can do it, you can do it. Go, raise your sword and punish the evil and promote the good. Ji Yufei's clone decided to hide until the end. He did not realize the importance of keeping a low profile before. Now, he was probably being targeted by many. Kill. At this moment, the strong man roared and waved the huge mace in his hand, charging into Dongyu Shui's group. In the next moment, the huge mace in the strong man's hand swept across a large area. The soldiers under Dongyu Shui cried for their parents and fled in all directions. Wang Zhon, you bastard. Didn't you say you would protect me? Why aren't you helping? Dongyu Shui could not help but panic. If her group was scattered, would she have to escort the Sky Overlord War God back to the East Moon Royal Capital? Yeah, I'm only protecting you. The others can do as they please. Ji Yufei's clone said indifferently. Don't forget, your mother and sister are in the group too. Dongyu Shui rolled her eyes and suddenly said. Thanks for the reminder. I'll go protect them first. Ji Yufei's clone said and leaped from the back of the horse. He walked in the air and traversed tens of meters in an instant, landing on his mother and sister's carriage. Dongyu Shui was depressed. Fire the arrows. Fire the arrows. Dongyu Shui could not care less and commanded the group to counterattack. At this moment, the strong man was already charging towards the Sky Overlord War God's prisoner carriage. At this moment, Dongyu Shui's guard, Yang Fei-yun, raised his spear and charged towards the strong man. The strong man roared and waved the huge mace, smashing it down on Yang Fei-yun's head. Do you want to die? Seeing this, Dongyu Shui panicked. With a flash, she appeared behind Yang Fei-yun, grabbing his collar and pulling him back. Boom! The mace smashed down, causing the ground to explode and dust to fly up. The place where Yang Fei-yun was originally standing was smashed into a huge pit. If Dongyu Shui did not pull Yang Fei-yun away, he would have been smashed into meat paste by the strong man's mace. Yang Fei-yun broke out in cold sweat. She never thought that the ferocious-looking guy would be so fierce. She was only half a step into Heaven Realm, yet she dared to fight a Heaven Realm Middle Realm brute. In the eyes of Ji Yufei's clone, she was simply courting death. You're courting death. Dongyu Shui waved her right hand and sent Yang Fei-yun dozens of meters away. She then flipped her left hand and a huge bow appeared in her hand. This was the treasure of the East Moon Empire, the East Moon Bow. The East Moon Bow was not given to Dongyu Shui by the East Moon Imperial Lord. She stole it from the palace treasury when she secretly left the imperial capital. East Moon Bow. The strong man's eyes lit up when he saw the bow in Dongyu Shui's hand. He knew his stuff. Dongyu Shui put her right hand on the bowstring and was about to draw it. The East Moon Bow did not use arrows, but condensed qi into arrows. As long as the bowstring was drawn, the power of the bow would be activated and light arrows would condense on the bowstring. The power of the light arrows condensed on the East Moon Bow was not any weaker than real arrows. Moreover, light arrows were even more terrifying than real arrows. If one was hit by the light arrows, the arrow force would instantly enter the body and destroy the life force of the person. Under normal circumstances, people who were shot by the East Moon Bow would only die in one way, and that was to explode. The strong man did not give Dongyu Shui the chance to draw the East Moon Bow. Whoosh. Chapter 5671. Who would dare to break out a prisoner without some ability? The burly man was like a human-shaped beast. He swung his mace in all directions, causing Dongyu Shui's team to be thrown off their feet and flee for their lives. Even an elite soldier would be defeated if they encountered this fellow. At that moment, The archers under Dong Yushue's command made their move. A series of piercing sounds rang out as countless arrows shot towards the burly man. These archers were all fighters who had undergone strict training. They had all been through the baptism of war, and each of them had the ability to shoot with great accuracy. The burly man who broke out the prisoner was huge. If they could not even hit such a huge target, then these archers were not fit to be called archers. However, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded appeared. The incomparably ferocious fellow actually turned a blind eye to the arrows that were shot at him. The arrows that were flying towards him instantly landed on his body. However, the arrows that could pierce through rocks were all deflected when they landed on his body. Not only were the arrows that landed on the man's armor deflected, but the arrows that landed on his skin and face were also deflected. It was as if the arrows had landed on a piece of indestructible steel, unable to harm the guy at all. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This guy had actually cultivated an indestructible body. The Black Chilean cities who clan's invincible mystic art? Dong Yushue used a mystical footwork to dodge the man's storm-like attacks. The man's mace did not even touch the corner of her clothes. Black Chilean cities who clan is nothing. The man sneered disdainfully. Could you be? Dong Yushue was shocked when she thought of something. The fierce-looking man sneered and continued to swing the huge spiked mace in his hand at Dong Yushue. Dong Yushue was shocked. She was almost hit by the man who did not know how to show mercy to the fairer sex. The mace smashed into the ground, sending dirt flying. This guy. Dong Yushue was covered in dirt. Die. The man roared and swung his mace at Dong Yushue. This time, Dong Yushue had no chance to dodge. This guy would not go easy on Dong Yushue just because she was a girl. If she was hit by the mace, there would only be one outcome for Dong Yushue, death. Just as Dong Yushue was about to be struck by the mace actually stopped a few inches away from her. The mace touched Shue's clothes at the waist. Dong Yushue was scared out of her wits. She had taken a trip to the gates of hell and almost died. She looked down and saw a hand reach out from the side and grab the mace. The owner of this hand was her guard, Wang Zhon. Ji Yufei's doppelganger, Wang Zhon, had no choice but to act. There was no way he could watch Dong Yushue be beaten to death by the raging bull. Sigh, the situation doesn't allow me to keep a low profile. Ji Yufei's clone said helplessly. At a time like this, you still want to hide. Dong Yushue was depressed. She was almost beaten to death. I told you, I'll protect you. Ji Yufei's clone stood proudly and said with his chest puffed out. You're my guard. Isn't it your duty to protect me? Dong Yushue said in annoyance and slipped away. Roar. The man roared and exerted his strength, trying to retrieve the mace that Ji Yufei's clone had grabbed. However, Ji Yufei's clone's hand seemed to be attached to the mace. No matter how much strength he exerted, the mace did not budge. Do you want it that badly? Then I'll give it to you. Ji Yufei's clone took advantage of the moment the man exerted his strength and let go. The man could not retract his strength in time and staggered a few steps back. The man widened his eyes and stared at the young man in front of him. The young man stood with his hands behind his back calmly, not taking him seriously at all. This shocked and angered the man. Is this guy really Dong Yushue's guard? There must be a mistake in the information. How could there be such an expert by Dong Yushue's side? Since he dared to break the prisoner out, this bull-like guy who was invulnerable must have done his homework and would not act rashly. After all, the person he wanted to capture was the Sky Overlord War God, the #1 war god of the tyrannical Sky Empire. The Sky Overlord War God's cultivation was unfathomable. Being able to capture him alive meant that the East Moon Empire had the help of an expert. Could this guy be that mysterious expert? Surrender obediently. Ji Yufei's doppelganger looked at the barbaric bull in front of him with a slight smile. You want your grandfather to surrender without putting up a fight? Go to hell. The fierce-looking man roared and swung his mace at Ji Yufei's doppelganger. Hey! Ji Yufei's doppelganger casually waved his right hand at the fierce-looking man. Then, this guy let out a blood-curdling scream and was sent flying. The mace in this guy's hand disappeared with a whoosh. Sigh, my strength doesn't allow me to keep a low profile. Ji Yufei's clone shook his head helplessly and walked toward the carriage where Wang Zhon's mother and sister were, ignoring the bull-like guy who was sent flying with a wave of his hand. The man hit the ground and spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood. Then, he collapsed on the ground and lost the ability to fight. Of course, Ji Yufei's clone did not kill him. Otherwise, the bull-like guy would not be able to survive even if he had 10 lives. Keep a low profile, you must keep a low profile. Ji Yufei's clone returned to the carriage and became the coachman. Everyone stared at this scene, dumbfounded. What are you guys doing? Why are you looking at me? Haven't you seen a handsome guy before? Ji Yufei's clone said to the people around him helplessly. Everyone was speechless. Your Highness, mind your appearance. You're almost drooling. Ji Yufei's clone felt even more helpless when he saw Dongyu Shuai looking at him with stars in her eyes. Dongyu Shuai touched the corner of her mouth subconsciously. You baddie. Dongyu Shuai blushed and quickly turned her back to Ji Yufei's clone. Hey, brother, is it appropriate for you to flirt with Her Highness like this? At this moment, a fatty appeared beside Ji Yufei's clone. It was a young, dark-skinned fatty. To be more precise, it was a dark-skinned fatty. What does it have to do with you, dark-skinned fatty? After watching the show for so long, you're finally going to make a move. Ji Yufei's doppelganger didn't even look at the dark-skinned fatty who suddenly appeared. Chapter 5672. Although the guy who broke the prisoner out looked extremely fierce, Ji Yufei's clone just casually waved his hand, and he was directly sent flying and fell to the ground. Everyone was in disbelief. A casual wave of his hand defeated a Heaven Realm expert. Everyone looked at Ji Yufei's clone in a different light. In Blackchilin City, when Ji Yufei's clone fought against Overlord War Immortal, not everyone in the city was able to see the cool scene of him displaying his invincible might. Only those big shots in Blackchilin City were lucky enough to watch the battle. Therefore, among the people present, not many really knew how powerful Ji Yufei's clone was. Just as Ji Yufei's clone returned to Wang Zhon's mother and sister's carriage and became the coachman, a dark-skinned fatty suddenly appeared beside him. The dark-skinned fatty floated in the void just like that, like a mass of air. Moreover, the surrounding people seemed to be unable to see the fatty at all. Even experts like Dongyu Shuai, Yang Feiyun, and Dragon Elephant Barbarian did not sense the fatty's existence. I say, fatty, if you want to break the prisoner out, then do it. If there's nothing else, then scram. Ji Yufei's clone glanced at the dark-skinned fatty and said impatiently, Brother, don't misunderstand, I'm not here to break the prisoner out. The dark-skinned fatty quickly explained. Don't tell me you're just passing by. Haha, how do you know? I'm really just passing by. The fatty laughed. Alright, I'll take it that you're just passing by. But since the show is over, shouldn't you be on your way? Ji Yufei's clone said indifferently. He did not believe a single word that the fatty said. Since this guy wanted to play, then he would play with him. He was very bored anyway. We seem to be going the same way. Let's go together, we can look out for each other. The dark-skinned fatty obviously didn't want to leave. Alright, as you wish. Ji Yufei's clone said indifferently. Hee. The dark-skinned fatty actually floated to the ground and transformed into a fat soldier. The more powerful a cultivator was, the more divine abilities they would master. This kind of transformation technique was the most inferior divine ability for Ji Yufei's clone. Moreover, in the world of cultivation, it seemed that there was no such thing as beauty or ugliness. Cultivators who were successful in their cultivation were naturally handsome and elegant. Not only were they as beautiful as fairies, even those who were originally ugly would become as beautiful as flowers. Even if a pig became a spirit, it could also transform into a handsome young man. Therefore, in the cultivation world, as long as one wanted to, even a pig head could become a handsome man. Therefore, in the cultivation world, as long as one wanted it, one could be as beautiful as the sky. Therefore, in the world of cultivation, anything was possible as long as one wanted it. However, what exactly did this fatty want to do? What was his background? All of this made Ji Yufei's avatar very excited. He wanted to see what exactly this fellow wanted to do. Dong Yushue was currently reorganizing the troops, and the soldiers who died in battle had already chosen a place to be buried. After being busy for several hours, it was already late at night. They directly set up camp on the side of the main road, and the night passed peacefully. Early the next morning, after eating and drinking, the troops continued on their way. The soldiers who were injured in yesterday's battle stayed behind. They had two choices. One was to return to Black Chilin City, which was not too far away from here. The second choice was to continue on their way and slowly follow behind. However, most of the injured soldiers chose to return to Black Chilin City. Because the capital of East Moon Kingdom was too far, and they were injured, they could not keep up with the troops. Thus, there was only one outcome, and that was to receive a bento box on the way. Dong Yushue's troops were fewer in number, but there was an additional prisoner carriage. This prisoner carriage was newly built, and the fierce man who broke out of the prisoners was locked in the new carriage, becoming a fellow sufferer of the sky-dominating war god. On the other hand, the sky-dominating young Lord Ba Fei was relatively more comfortable, because Dong Yushue had arranged a carriage for him, and he did not have a chance to show up. As they got further and further away from Black Chilin City, there were fewer people around the main road. In the end, there were no signs of human habitation for several hundred kilometers. There were dense forests and hills everywhere. This was the hinterland of the East Moon Empire, so there were no mountains or precipitous ridges. However, the roars of wild beasts could be heard from time to time in the ancient forests. In this endless forest, there were many cities, but the distance between the cities was very far. Ji Yufei's clone and the others were passing through an ancient forest that spanned 800 kilometers. On both sides of the road were tall trees, and the canopy of the trees blocked the sky. The mountain path was dim. It would instead be abnormal if nothing happened while passing through such a place. Can we pass through this forest before nightfall? Ji Yufei's clone transmitted his voice to Dong Yushue, who was at the front of the group. I'm afraid not. Dong Yushue transmitted her voice to Ji Yufei's clone. Then we'll have to trouble you. Ji Yufei's clone said with a frown. With you here, what's there to be afraid of? Dong Yushue said calmly. As long as Wang Zhong was here, she didn't need to worry about her safety, because Wang Zhong wouldn't let anyone hurt her. She was very confident in Wang Zhong. After all, when Ji Yufei's clone was in Black Chilin City, Wang Zhong had directly defeated the Overlord War God. Keep a low profile, keep a low profile. Ji Yufei's clone said angrily. I won't allow you to keep a low profile. Dong Yushue retorted. Ji Yufei's clone was speechless. Do I need your permission to keep a low profile? Of course, he wouldn't say this to Dong Yushue. After all, he was still her bodyguard. However, this couldn't stop his determination to keep a low profile. In the limitless realm, the god level was only a minor character. Above the god level was the saint level, above the saint level was the half-step peerless realm, and above the peerless realm was, in short, there were simply too many people in the limitless realm who could kill Ji Yufei's clone. If he were to offend a half-step saint, or even a saint level, he would have to face a bento box. Ji Yufei had paid a huge price to send a strand of his will into the limitless realm. Therefore, he couldn't keep a high profile like he did in the other worlds. He had to keep a low profile. Only then would he be able to live longer and complete his clone's mission in the limitless realm. At this moment, Ji Yufei's clone had a bad feeling. If they couldn't pass through the forest before nightfall, they would be in deep trouble. However, this was a team of thousands of people. There were also horse carriages and prisoner carriages among them. This already determined that the team couldn't be too fast. Passing through the forest in half a day seemed very unrealistic. As expected, an ear-piercing sound suddenly resounded above their heads. Shadows swept past the treetops and instantly disappeared. Enemy attack! Dong Yushue shouted. The team immediately stopped. The archers quickly drew their arrows and narked them on their bowstrings. They looked around vigilantly. The others immediately tensed up. At this moment, a dozen shadows silently appeared on the mountain path in front of them. Someone came to break the prisoners again. Sigh. Chapter 5673. 800 miles of primeval forest, only a single mountain path ran through it. On both sides of the path were dense and tall trees. The trees on both sides of the path were lush, their huge canopies blocking the sky. Even if the sun was high up in the sky, the path would still be dim. At this moment, a dozen black figures suddenly appeared on the path ahead. These black shadows blocked the mountain path, and a cold murderous aura pervaded the air. You really don't know your place. Dong-Yu Shuai coldly stared at these sneaky fellows and sneered. Pairs of soldiers charged out from behind Dong-Yu Shuai and formed a battle formation in front of her. They held their shields in front of them, and pointed their spears at the black figures in front of them. The archers at the back of the team also spread out, narking their arrows and aiming at the black shadows. The thousands of soldiers that Dong-Yu Shuai brought out from Blackchelin City were all well-trained and seasoned veterans. Every single one of them had rich battle experience. They're all experts. Ji Yu Fei's clone, who was sitting on the carriage as the coachman, frowned when he saw these black figures. These people were all heaven-rank experts. None of them were weaker than the big guy from before. Moreover, these mysterious fellows were obviously all assassins. These guys would do anything to achieve their goals. Brother, Her Highness is no match for these people. It's up to you now. The black fatty who had transformed into a soldier came next to Ji Yu Fei's clone and whispered. At this moment, the black figures began to press towards Dong-Yu Shuai. As they moved, the withered leaves on the ground floated up and danced in the air. Hee. Ji Yu Fei's clone rolled his eyes. In the next moment, he extended his right hand without any warning and directly grabbed the black fatty who had transformed into a soldier. The dark-skinned fatty had been on guard against Ji Yu Fei's doppelganger, but Ji Yu Fei's doppelganger's attack was too fast. Ji Yu Fei's doppelganger grabbed his neck. Even if the dark-skinned fatty had earth-shattering divine abilities, he couldn't use any of them at this time. Brother, what are you doing? The dark fatty's shock was no small matter. You can't just come here and eat and drink for free. You have to put in some effort, don't you think? Ji Yu Fei's doppelganger laughed. What? Don't. Put me down first. I'll go up and deal with these guys. The dark-skinned fatty said hurriedly. Ji Yu Fei's doppelganger did not trust this fellow. If he let go, this fellow would definitely run away immediately. Go. Ji Yu Fei's doppelganger waved its hand, and the dark-skinned fatty shot out like a cannonball towards the dozen or so black shadows. Everyone was startled by this sudden scene. The dozen or so mysterious experts instantly dispersed. Boom! The dark-skinned fatty smashed heavily into the midst of the dozen or so mysterious experts. Dried twigs, withered leaves, and dirt flew in all directions. You bastards, listen up. Our Lord Fatty is going to fight all of you. Ji Yu Fei's doppelganger shouted. The dark-skinned fatty, who had just crawled up from the ground, was depressed. Swoosh! 3 rays of cold light appeared and shot towards the dark-skinned fatty. A cold light flashed past, and a withered leaf was instantly split in half. Brother, you're too disloyal. The fatty shrunk his neck. A ray of cold light brushed past his head, causing a strand of hair to fall down. He then took a step back and turned around. Another ray of cold light brushed past his clothes at his waist. The fatty reached out with his right hand and grabbed the ray of cold light that was aimed at his throat. What? The group of black-clothed men were shocked to see this scene. This fatty looked like a simple-minded person, but he actually had such skills. It seemed like he had quite a background. The moment the fatty was caught by Ji Yu Fei's doppelganger, his camouflage art lost its effect, and he revealed his true form. The 3 black-clothed men attacked at the same time. They initially wanted to kill the fatty before dealing with Dong-Yu Shuai. Who would have thought that the fatty who suddenly appeared was so powerful? The fatty was extremely depressed at this moment. You bastards think I wanted to attack. The ray of cold light in the fatty's hand was a flying sword. The flying sword was as long as a chopstick, and in the fatty's hand, it looked like a small silver snake that was constantly struggling. Flying sword? You're from the Eastern Boundless Sword sect. The fatty's expression turned serious. He exerted force in his right hand, and the flying sword in his hand immediately exploded, turning into specks of light that disappeared into the void. Wah! One of the black-clothed men who attacked the fatty spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura was immediately weakened by more than half. To a sword cultivator, a flying sword was equivalent to a second life. Once the flying sword was destroyed, the sword cultivator's abilities would be reduced by more than half. A sword cultivator without a flying sword was like a tiger without teeth. The black-clothed men were shocked to see this. This fatty actually destroyed a flying sword with his bare hands. That was a flying sword that had been tempered hundreds and thousands of times. To destroy a flying sword with his bare hands, just how much strength was required? Kill. Without any superfluous words, the group of black-clothed men directly attacked the fatty. Do you think I'm a sick cat if I don't show my power? The fatty's body shook as he spoke. In the next moment, the sound of the great path seemed to ring in the void. Countless Tao patterns rushed out from the fatty's body, turning into the phantom of a godly person. Violent waves of power spread out in all directions, directly sending the black-clothed men who were attacking the fatty flying. I'm amazing. I'm amazing. Everyone, give me a round of applause. Jiu Fei's clone stood up from the carriage and applauded the fatty. The surrounding people were all stunned. Brother, what happened? At this moment, a weak voice came from the carriage. It's okay. I'm here. You and Mother can rest assured. Jiu Fei's clone said. He had a feeling of obedience. His original body, Jiu Fei, was an orphan. He had been brought back to the Taishen sect by his master, Wn Xiancheng, since he was a child. He cultivated ancient martial arts, so his progress was slow. He had never known who his parents were. Even his master, Wn Xiancheng, did not know. Now, one of his spirits had taken over Wang Zhon's body, and Wang Zhon was actually not dead. His spirit was only asleep. Wang Zhon's mother and sister had now become his mother and sister. The sudden appearance of his mother and sister really gave Jiu Fei's avatar a huge headache, causing him to have a huge headache. Especially this sister. She had been weak and sickly since she was a child. In fact, Jiu Fei's clone could tell at a glance that his sister had a born Taoism aptitude. This was too awesome. Born Taoism aptitude. His sister was born with such a physique. This could only happen in the infinite realm. In other worlds, there was no such thing as a born Taoism aptitude. Chapter 5674. The dark-skinned and plump man had a mysterious background. Jiu Fei's clone could not tell who he was, but even Dongyu Shuai could not tell who he was. At this time, Dongyu Shuai was also dumbfounded by this scene. Since when did such a powerful guy sneak into her team? Wang Zhon seemed to know who this guy was. What's going on? Dongyu Shuai transmitted her voice to Jiu Fei's clone. How would I know? Jiu Fei's doppelganger shrugged. How could you not know? Dongyu Shuai did not believe it at all. Is it someone from your sect? Dongyu Shuai asked. Jiu Fei's clone was speechless. I see. You do have a mysterious sect behind you. I understand now. Dongyu Shuai nodded. What do you understand? Jiu Fei's clone was really depressed. Your sect doesn't want to come out, doesn't want the world to know of its existence. I understand, I know the rules of such secluded sects. Dongyu Shuai said very seriously. Jiu Fei's doppelganger was speechless. The princess's imagination was too powerful. However, it seemed that this was also a good thing. Knowing that he had the support of a mysterious sect, the princess wouldn't have any ill intentions towards him. Just as Jiu Fei's clone was conversing with Princess Dongyu, the fatty was actually fighting them all alone on the mountain path. He was locked in a stalemate with the dozen or so black-clothed men involved in the secret formation. The dozen or so mysterious men used their movement techniques, and in the next moment, their power actually merged together. 10,000 swords flying immortal. The mysterious man in the lead roared. In the next moment, a terrifying sword power erupted, and countless sword flashes appeared in the void. These sword flashes pierced towards the fatty from all directions. Every sword flash was extremely dazzling and sharp. Wherever the sword flashes passed, the void seemed to be torn apart. You bastards! The fatty was furious, because he no longer doubted them. He already knew where these fellows came from. No wonder they covered their faces, this group of sanctimonious fellows. With the protection of the golden body, I am invincible, the fat man roared. In the next moment, the divine sound of the great path seemed to ring in the void around him. Countless golden patterns of the way rushed out from his body. The patterns intertwined and instantly turned into a golden silhouette. The moment the countless swordlights pierced the golden figure from all directions, they were all sent flying away. You are, the mysterious leader seemed to have thought of something, and a look of horror appeared in his eyes. Retreat! He roared angrily and was about to flee. You want to leave now? Too late. Fatty was furious. He clasped his hands together in front of his chest. In the next moment, his clasped hands separated and countless palm shadows appeared in the void, directly blasting towards the dozen mysterious men in black. Rumble, the violent palm force erupted, and the void around the fat man was shaking. Seeing how fierce the fat man was, Gu Fei's clone could not help but be a little surprised. It was really a fluke that he was able to subdue the fat man just now. Bang, 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 more than a dozen mysterious men were directly bombarded by the fat man's palm shadows, and all of them were sent flying. They kept vomiting blood in the air, directly smashing on the mountain path or into the forest on both sides. The fat man stood proudly and slowly retracted his palm. This was simply the bearing of a generation's grandmaster. Seeing this scene, everyone was inexplicably shocked. This fat man was really terrifying when he was angry. Lord Fatty is mighty, Lord Fatty is so handsome. Gu Fei's clone raised his arms and shouted at the fat man. Brother, you are too unkind. The fat man was depressed. He did not want to attack, but this guy grabbed his vital point and threw him out. Even if he did not want to attack, he had no choice. I say, Lord Fatty, since we are on the road together, let's help each other. If you are in trouble next time, as long as you say the word, I will not shirk my duty. Gu Fei's clone said disapprovingly. You said it yourself. The fat man suddenly smiled and directly returned to the carriage of Gu Fei's clone. He sat side by side with Gu Fei's clone and became the coachman together. Everyone stared at the two of them in a daze. For a moment, no one spoke. Only the painful screams of the mysterious men could be heard on the mountain path. The fat man did not really kill them, but he did not hold back either. These guys were really despicable, to actually do bad things with their faces covered. How could he let them go so easily? Why are you still not arresting these guys? Dongyu Shuer shouted at the surrounding warriors. Yes, Your Highness. Longxiang Man and Yang Feiyun immediately took the order and led their men forward. The mysterious men in black were heavily injured by the fat man and had long lost their ability to fight. Then, they were directly tied up by the warriors who pounced on them like wolves and tigers. Another 13 mysterious men were captured, and these mysterious men were very likely to be sword cultivators from the Infinity Sword sect. This was going to be a bit troublesome. The Infinity Sword sect was the strongest sword sect in the East Pole. Even if the East Moon Empire was given 100 guts, they would not dare to offend the Infinity Sword sect, because this was not a competition of the same level. Any elder from the Infinity Sword sect could destroy the East Moon Empire. This is a hot potato. Dongyu Shuer came to the side of Gu Fei's clone. Gu Fei's clone naturally knew what the princess was talking about. Is the Infinity Sword sect very strong? Gu Fei's clone said indifferently. You actually don't know about the Infinity Sword sect, or, Dongyu Shuer thought of a possibility and could not help but be shocked. Could the sect behind Wang Zhon be so strong that it could ignore the Infinity Sword sect? She was imagining things again. If that was really the case, then she would have to carefully consider her relationship with Wang Zhon. At this moment, in the eyes of Dongyu Shuer, Gu Fei's clone Wang Zhon was many times better than the genius of the Hu family, Hu Xiaotian. Most importantly, Wang Zhon had an extremely powerful sect behind him. This was the true advantage in Dongyu Shuer's eyes. In the limitless realm, the importance of a powerful sect was absolutely unquestionable. Don't worry about those useless things. With me here, what are you worried about? Gu Fei's clone glanced at the fat man beside him, then turned to Princess Dongyu. Don't you think so, me? Ji Yufei's clone continued to speak to the fat man beside him. Whatever you say. Do as you please, the fat man said in annoyance. He had been screwed over by this guy just now. Look, since I've already said so, Your Highness, you should go do what you need to do. Ji Yufei's clone smiled. Chapter 5675. The group continued on their way. The 13 mysterious black-clothed men did not have the luxury of a prisoner carriage. They were directly tied up by Dongyu Shue'er's subordinates and dragged behind them in a carriage. Another 13 prisoners were added to the group. As for Ji Yufei's clone and the mysterious fatty, they continued to be their coachmen. However, the surrounding people were very respectful of them, because the two coachmen were truly monstrous. One was a badass who crippled the #1 war god in Blackchelene City, and the other was an expert who defeated 13 sword cultivators in a single move. With these two around, anyone who tried to break the prisoners would fail and become prisoners instead. For Dongyu Shue'er, she was very relieved to have these two in the group. She became more and more curious about the sect behind Ji Yufei's clone. However, she would never have imagined that there was no powerful and mysterious sect behind him at all. Everything was just the result of her imagination. Moreover, Dongyu Shue'er was even more overthinking things. Of course, this was the effect Ji Yufei's clone wanted. As long as Dongyu Shue'er believed that he had the support of a mysterious sect, she and the entire Dongyu imperial family would have to be polite to him. In the infinite realm, it was better to keep a low profile. Before becoming a supreme existence that could contend against the 5 giants of the infinite realm, Ji Yufei's clone decided to keep a low profile and continue living. After all, in the infinite realm, all living beings had extremely long lifespans. As long as no accidents happened, they could basically live forever. It was precisely because of this long lifespan that even if the living beings here did not have much talent, they could still use time to increase their cultivation. If talent was not enough, time would make up for it. If cultivating for 1,000 years was not enough, then they would cultivate for billions of years. For the living beings of the infinite realm, the most worthless thing seemed to be time. Therefore, among the great forces of the infinite realm, divine level was really not much. There were even many saint-level cultivators. In the infinite realm, the most difficult cultivation to break through was the infinite prime realm. There were not many saint-level cultivators below infinite prime, but there were many divine-level cultivators. Of course, this was only for the great forces with legacies. Moreover, legacies were also divided into different grades. For example, the legacies of forces like the East Moon Empire and the tyrannical Heaven Empire were much weaker than those of major forces. God-ranked experts were almost invincible in these two empires. However, for a great power like the Limitless Sword Sect, their disciples would be able to reach the divine rank after cultivating for 10 or 20,000 years. This was the importance of inheritance. Without the inheritance, it was impossible to cultivate to the corresponding realm. The inheritance of the East Moon Empire was only an immortal level inheritance. This was also the reason why Dongyu Shue'er was in awe of the master of Ji Yufei's clone she had imagined. A weak lineage could never compete with a powerful lineage. At this time, seeing that it was going to be night soon, Shue'er had no choice but to find a small valley near the mountain path to settle down and continue their journey the next day. Traveling in this primitive ancient forest was already full of danger. After nightfall, the snakes, insects, rats, and ants that hid during the day would come out. Those venomous snakes and insects were no joke. If bitten by a venomous creature, even a cultivator might die. No one dared to underestimate those venomous creatures, because no one knew when they would jump out and take a bite. In the easternmost region of the Limitless Realm, there had been a famous incident where a sacred lord was bitten by a bug and died. A sacred lord was bitten to death by a bug. That was a sacred level expert. Scatter the powder around the campsite. Dongyu Shue'er said to young Feiyun and Dragon Elephant Man beside her. Yes, Your Highness. Young Feiyun and Dragon Elephant Man accepted the order and left. As night fell, the roars of savage beasts could be heard from outside the small valley. Brother, I'm scared. In the tent where Ji Yufei's clone was, Wang Lingxue, who was wrapped in a thick coat, shrunk her neck and said softly, "With brother here, what are you afraid of?" Ji Yufei's clone, Wang Zhon, said as he flipped the roasted meat on the fire. A meaty aroma filled the tent. "Your sister has been timid since she was young. Zhon, when can we reach the royal capital?" A middle-aged woman sitting on the fire pit asked. "Mother, it's still early. Don't worry, I'll definitely bring you and sister back to the royal capital." Ji Yufei's clone, Wang Zhon, said with a complicated feeling. "Brother Wang, I have something to discuss with you." At this moment, the fatty suddenly came over. "There's no room for discussion." Ji Yufei's clone waved his hand. "This guy has a mysterious background. He must have some ulterior motives for staying here and refusing to leave. Look, the fox's tail is finally revealed. I haven't even said anything and you're already rejecting me?" The fatty was stunned for a good while. "This guy doesn't play by the rules." Ji Yufei's clone smiled and said, "Because you're definitely up to no good." "Sigh, brother, what are you saying?" The fatty laughed at himself, then pretended to be mysterious and said, "Aren't you curious about what I want to discuss with you?" "Nope." Ji Yufei's clone said indifferently as he roasted the meat. The fatty was completely speechless. "Don't say it." Ji Yufei's clone stared at the roasted meat in his hand and swallowed the words that the fatty was about to say. "I said don't say it." Ji Yufei's clone flipped the roasted meat. The fatty was depressed. "I'll drink, all right?" Fatty reached into a tattered cloth bag on his body and pulled out a jar of wine. He removed the seal and a sweet aroma of wine wafted out. At the next moment, the wine jar in the fatty's hand disappeared. It was in the hands of Ji Yufei's clone. "You're not even letting me drink wine." The fatty was enraged. "Why are you getting angry? It's bad for your liver." Ji Yufei's clone said straightforwardly, "I'm the one who says that drinking wine hurts my stomach." The fatty said angrily, "You have wine and I have meat. Big pieces of meat and big mouthfuls of wine. What a joy." After saying that, Ji Yufei took a big gulp. "Awesome." Ji Yufei's clone said comfortably, "This is what you call wine. The wine in Blackchilin City's military camp is like water compared to the wine in his hand. This is the first time he drank the immortal brew from the limitless realm. Not bad, this can be considered an immortal brew. Moreover, this immortal brew contains the undying substance of the limitless realm. If mortals eat it, their lifespan will increase. If cultivators eat it, their cultivation will increase. What a fragrant wine." Right at this moment, a figure walked in from outside, and then he sat down beside Ji Yufei's clone. He snatched the jar of wine from Ji Yufei's clone's hand and took a huge gulp. "Your Highness." Chapter 5676. Under the night sky, lights flickered in the small valley. Dongyu Shue'er's team of thousands set up camp in the small valley. Dozens of tents were scattered in the small valley. The tents were not placed randomly. The main tent was naturally the residence of Her Highness, located at the center of the dozens of tents. Both inside and outside the small valley were sentries. If anything happened, they could release a whistling arrow, and everyone in the small valley would react immediately. And to guard against the snakes, insects, rats, and ants in the forest, they would sprinkle medicinal powder around the tents. This was to avoid unnecessary casualties. When setting up camp in the wilderness, what they were most afraid of were poisonous creatures. That was because the toxicity of the limitless realm's poisonous creatures was not ordinary. Even sage-level experts would fall prey to it. Moreover, they were not here to play. Dongyu Shue'er and the others were escorting the Sky Overlord War God. The Sky Overlord War God was the #1 war god of the tyrannical Sky Empire. He was also a divine-level expert of the tyrannical Sky Empire. The importance of the Sky Overlord War God to the tyrannical Sky Empire was undeniable. The people of the tyrannical Sky Empire naturally did not want to see their Sky Overlord War God being escorted to the imperial capital of the East Moon Empire to be humiliated. The people of the tyrannical Sky Empire wanted to save the Sky Overlord War God, but it was not an easy task. But if they could not save him, there was only one way. What's going on? Don't the sky-piercing tower boast of their abilities? Why can't they even rescue a prisoner? Outside the forest, under the shadow of a large tree stood a few ghost-like black-clothed people. What do you mean? You dare to look down on the sky-piercing tower? One of the black-clothed people sneered. Did I say something wrong? Another black-clothed person mocked. My people died inside too. The information you gave us was wrong, and you're blaming us? The black-clothed person from the sky-piercing tower was furious. Say, before you act, don't you first investigate the opponent's strength? The black-clothed person became even more disdainful. All right, stop arguing. If the first time doesn't work, we'll do it the second time. If the second time doesn't work, we'll do it the third time. There's always a chance. The black-clothed person who had been standing in the shadow said. This black-robed person's voice was pleasing to the ears. It was actually a woman, and judging from her voice, she should be a young woman. Of course, in the limitless realm, young women could also be older sisters who had lived for tens of thousands of years. The black-clothed man from Tongtian Tower wanted to say more. All right, let's go. Since we've accepted the mission, we'll have to complete it. In this world, it's really easy to earn some cultivation resources. The black-clothed woman heaved a long sigh, turned around, and left. The black-clothed man from Skysplit Tower sneered and glared fiercely at the other two black-clothed men before hurriedly chasing after them. Great Elder, are we going to let them go just like that? Under the tree, a black-clothed man said to another black-clothed man. If we don't let them go, are we going to make them stay for dinner? The Great Elder said snappily. But the war god, the other man in black, was a little anxious. Don't worry. Since Skysplit Tower has accepted our mission, they will definitely complete it. All we need to do is wait for news. After all, Skysplit Tower is the #1 assassin organization in the Eastern Pole. The Great Elder said in a deep voice. But they are an assassin organization after all. Their assassination skills are very powerful, but rescuing prisoners, the man in black said hesitantly. Skysplit Tower was the #1 assassin organization in the Eastern Pole, a ghost in the dark night. Who cares, as long as Skysplit Tower accepts the mission? The Great Elder was not worried at all. Skysplit Tower's strength was there for all to see. They were the #1 assassin organization in the Eastern Pole. If the tyrannical Sky Empire could afford it, they would have asked Skysplit Tower to kill the East Moon Imperial Lord a long time ago. However, killing the Imperial Lord of a dynasty was a matter that pierced the heavens. The price was unimaginable, and even the tyrannical Sky Empire could not afford it. Because the implications of killing an Imperial Lord were too great. The East Moon Empire also had a backer behind them. At this moment, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The surroundings of the small valley were very quiet. Not even the chirping of insects could be heard, and the roars of wild beasts had disappeared at some point in time. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Jiu Fei's clone had been paying attention to the movements around the small valley. However, he was currently roasting meat and drinking wine in his own tent, enjoying himself. Your Highness, do you have something to discuss with me? Jiu Fei's clone took the wine jar from Dongyu Shue'er's hands and took a big gulp. The immortal brew of the unbounded realm was really not bad, but it was a little strong and burned the throat. As soon as the wine entered his stomach, he felt warm all over. Waves of warmth directly flowed through the meridians of his body. It felt really good. You're going to waste my azure sky fall just like that? The fatty felt his heart ache. This fine wine was meant to be savored slowly. Savored wine. Do you understand? You two idiots. The fatty watched as Jiu Fei's clone and Dongyu Shue'er took a sip of wine and a mouthful of meat. His chubby face twitched from time to time. Wine is meant to be drunk, not savored. I drink to my heart's content. Do you understand? To my heart's content. Jiu Fei's clone said as he raised the wine jar and took another big gulp. Drinking, to my heart's content. Haha, not bad, to my heart's content. If not, why the hell are you drinking? The fatty seemed to suddenly understand and laughed heartily. Then, he took the wine jar from Jiu Fei's clone and took a big gulp. Fatty, you're quite perceptive. Why don't you become my disciple? How about it? Ji Fei's clone suddenly said to the fatty with a smile. Pu. The fatty spat out a mouthful of wine when he heard that. Moreover, it sprayed all over the face of Ji Fei's clone. Ji Fei's doppelganger was depressed. Wait, what's going on? Aren't you from the same sect as this fatty? Princess Dongyu was a little confused. Haha, who said that I'm from the same sect as him? Ji Fei's clone laughed. This, Dongyu Shui was stunned and did not know what to say for a moment. This Wang Zhon really did not say that the fatty was from the mysterious sect behind him. Then who is this fatty? Someone of unknown origin? What the hell is going on? You want to be my master? Haha. The fatty looked at Ji Fei's clone and suddenly laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. I say, fatty, could it be that you're someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with the 5 magnates? Am I not qualified to be your master? Ji Fei's clone said disapprovingly. You actually know about the 5 magnates? The fatty's smile disappeared when he heard that. He stared at Ji Fei's clone with a solemn expression. His gaze was extremely sharp, as if he wanted to see through Ji Fei's clone inside and out. In the fatty's eyes, Ji Fei's clone was also extremely mysterious. He could not see through him. Ha ha. Chapter 5677. In the tent where Ji Fei's clone was, Princess Dongyu was dumbfounded. She found it hard to believe that the fatty was someone of unknown origin. What's going on? Tell me honestly, do you have a master or not? Dongyu Shui stared at Ji Fei's clone and said with a serious expression. Why so serious? Ji Fei's clone did not care at all. He could not be bothered to explain. This is a very serious question. Dongyu Shui was very serious. Serious my ass. In this world, if you're not a friend, you're an enemy. It's that simple. This fatty should be a friend now. Of course, nobody can say for sure what will happen in the future. Anything is possible, Ji Fei's clone said as he took the wine jar from the fatty's hand and took a huge gulp. Haha, good. Fatty laughed heartily. There weren't many people who were as forthright as Ji Fei's clone. You're not bad too. Ji Fei's clone said as he handed the wine jar to the fatty. The two of them were having a great time drinking and eating, leaving Princess Dongyu at the side. This made Dongyu Shui very depressed. She was also dumbfounded by Ji Fei's doppelganger and became wary of this fatty. After all, it was already very polite of her not to chase a person of unknown origin away when he had snuck into the team. Dongyu Shui also suspected why the fatty would sneak into the group. Could it be that he wanted to break the prisoner out? These were all things that Dongyu Shui had to worry about. She was the boss of the group and was responsible for the safety of everyone in the group. Dongyu Shui could not sit still and quickly found an excuse to leave the tent. Not long after she left, there were many guards outside the tent where Ji Fei's clone was. Obviously, these guards were sent by Her Highness to keep an eye on the fatty. However, the fatty did not seem to care at all. He was still talking and laughing with Ji Fei's clone, drinking wine and eating meat. Ji Fei's spiritual force had taken over Wang Zhon's body. Now, he was Wang Zhon. He had to take care of his sister and mother on behalf of Wang Zhon. Otherwise, he would not have brought his sister and mother along. The imperial capital of the East Moon Empire was the most prosperous city in the East Moon Empire. In the imperial capital, everyone was either rich or noble. Ji Fei's clone was going to bring his younger sister and mother there to enjoy life. With his current level of cultivation, it was more than enough for him to gain a foothold in the East Moon royal capital. Sigh, it's time to awaken Wang Zhon's soul. Although Ji Fei's clone had possessed Wang Zhon's physical body, it hadn't destroyed Wang Zhon's soul. Seizing Wang Zhon's body was just a stopgap measure for Ji Fei's spiritual force. After completing the mission, he would return this body to Wang Zhon. Brother, what are you thinking about? Fatty could not help but ask when he saw Ji Fei's clone suddenly fall silent. Nothing. Ji Fei's doppelganger subconsciously looked in the direction of his sister and mother. At this time, his sister and mother were already asleep. They were all ordinary people without much cultivation. After a day of traveling, they were tired and sleepy, so they went to bed after dinner. Haha, that's easy. As long as you nod, no one in this world can hurt them. Fatty laughed. TSK, you sure talk big. Gu Fei's clone said disapprovingly. Sigh, why don't you believe me? I'm telling the truth. Fatty looked gloomy. You're only at the divine level. There are many people stronger than you. What right do you have to say something so awesome? Who gave you the confidence? Gu Fei's clone looked at Fatty with a faint smile. Fatty almost blurted out his background when he heard that. You what? Tell me, who gave you the courage? Gu Fei's clone asked. I gave myself the courage. Can't I? Fatty's eyes flickered as he said. Your courage is praiseworthy. Gu Fei's clone shook his head when he heard that. This guy was really too cunning. He actually refused to reveal anything. Even I can't see through this guy. Sorry for not recognizing you. Fatty was very proud. Tell me, what do you want? Gu Fei's clone couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with this Fatty. Fatty was stunned when he heard that. He didn't expect Gu Fei's clone to be so direct. Nothing much. I just took a fancy to your sister. Fatty didn't say anything else. Haha, Gu Fei's clone laughed. In fact, he had already guessed it. Why would a person like Fatty break a prisoner out? This Overlord War immortal didn't have that much influence. His sister had an innate Taoism aptitude. Although she was weak and sickly now, once she obtained a suitable inheritance, she would be able to soar into the sky. Even an ugly duckling could become a swan. This kind of physique was very rare even in the limitless realm. Fatty, your eyes are really sharp. Gu Fei's clone stared at Fatty next to him. You know too. Fatty was surprised when he heard that. It seemed that Fatty already knew about his sister's secret. What do you think? Gu Fei's doppelganger revealed a faint smile. Alright, I'll lay my cards on the table. I want to recommend your sister to an old senior to be his successor. Fatty said helplessly. What old senior? Tell me, how old is he? Is he older than the 5 magnates? Gu Fei's clone asked curiously. Do you know how to chat? You're killing me with just one sentence. Fatty was depressed. Why? Can't you say it? How do I know if you're telling the truth or not? Gu Fei's clone grabbed the wine jar and drank a mouthful. Then, he wiped the corner of his mouth. It's not that I can't say it. It's just that it's not time yet. Fatty scratched his head and said embarrassedly. Why are you acting like a girl? You're so wishy-washy. It's not straightforward, not straightforward. Gu Fei's clone shook his head. Fatty was not annoyed when he heard that. Who doesn't have a secret in this world? Don't you think so? He still refused to reveal his background. Alright, I'll tell you too. I won't hand my sister over to an unknown guy. Gu Fei's clone did not even consider letting his sister be under someone else's tutelage. She was born with a Taoism aptitude, and the inheritance she had was not some ordinary inheritance. It was more than enough for him to be the master of a born with a Taoism aptitude. Once a born with a Taoism aptitude started cultivating, her cultivation speed would be absolutely abnormal. It would not take long for her to become powerful. Others would need hundreds of years to reach a realm that she might be able to reach in a few years. This was the advantage of having a heaven-defying talent. It could not be helped. This was innate. Those who had a born with a Taoism aptitude were blessed by the heavens. This damn Fatty actually took a fancy to his sister and wanted to take her away. It was simply wishful thinking. Chapter 5678. The mysterious Fatty finally showed his true colors. He had taken a fancy to Wang Zhon's sister, but it was Wang Zhon's sickly sister. Wang Zhon's little sister had been frail and sickly since she was young. She always looked sickly, and everyone around her said that this little girl would never grow up. However, Wang Lingxue was already more than 10 years old. She did not die, but she was still sickly. People with such an innate Taoism aptitude would not live past 20 years old if they did not cultivate. If Gu Fei had not possessed Wang Zhon's body with his divine will and discovered that Wang Lingxue had an innate Taoism aptitude, Wang Lingxue would only have a few more years to live. Not everyone could see that Wang Lingxue had such a heaven-defying constitution. There were many cultivators with high cultivation in Black Qilin City. The city lord, Dong Yu Tian, was a heaven-stage cultivator, and earth-stage cultivators could be seen everywhere. However, even heaven-stage and even god-stage cultivators could not see through Wang Lingxue's constitution. Otherwise, Wang Lingxue would have been taken away by those cultivation forces. Even the 5 magnates of the limitless realm would be jealous of someone with such a heaven-defying constitution, especially a young one, not to mention other super forces. Brother, you have to think this through. Don't let a good seedling go to waste. Inside the tent, Fatty said in a serious tone. I say, Fatty, don't try to fool me anymore. Do I look like I'm easy to fool? Jiu Fei's clone said impatiently. Fatty was speechless. This fellow was simply impervious to everything. Why was this fellow so stubborn? Could it be that he really had to reveal all his cards? At this moment, the ears of Jiu Fei's clone twitched, and a gleam of light flashed in the depths of his eyes. At this moment, teams of soldiers were patrolling the camp in the small valley. After nightfall, the entire valley was on guard against the people of the tyrannical empire taking advantage of the darkness to rescue the prisoners. The capture of the tyrannical war god was a serious blow to the morale of the tyrannical empire. At this moment, the army of the tyrannical empire had already reached Black Qilin City and confronted the army of the East Moon Empire. A great battle was about to break out. However, all of this had nothing to do with Jiu Fei's clone. Moreover, to Jiu Fei's clone, he was just a passerby in this world. He was here to scout for his original body. However, the limitless realm was too big. Even the easternmost region was comparable to a super large world. Even powerful infinite primes did not know how big the limitless realm was, because there were some places that even powerful infinite primes did not dare to set foot in. Throughout the history of the infinite world, it was not like there had never been infinite primes who had died. Of course, the death of a powerful infinite prime was an earth-shaking matter in the infinite world. It was enough to shake up the entire infinite world. Jiu Fei's clone was well aware of his mission in the unbounded realm. However, it seemed that it wouldn't be easy for him to complete his main body's mission. Li S was AAA Moes FASS MoSSSSS YesSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSSssssssssssssssss Instantly, he had also sensed the commotion. "Kid, you've hidden your strength well." Ji Yufei's doppelganger glanced at Fatty with a faint smile. "You're the one who's hiding your strength," Fatty said snappily. "Why don't you do it this time?" Ji Yufei's doppelganger said indifferently. "TSK, why should I attack?" When Fatty thought about how he had been cheated by this guy during the day, he was very unhappy. It had always been him who cheated others. Who could cheat him? However, ever since he had met this guy, he had been at a disadvantage. Could this guy be his nemesis? "Sai, why are you so insensible?" Ji Yufei's clone sighed. "Hehe, you want to play this trick with me? You want me to be your free fighter? That won't work on me," Fatty said calmly. "You're awesome." Ji Yufei's clone gave Fatty a thumbs up. At this time, a black shadow had actually avoided the numerous sentries and sneaked into the small valley. There were many heaven rank experts in the small valley, but none of them sensed the arrival of the mysterious black shadow. In the prison carriage, the Sky Overlord War God, who was chained up, suddenly sat up. His gaze became sharp and his eyes flickered. Although his cultivation had been sealed by Ji Yufei's doppelganger, his perception was still amazing. After all, the Sky Overlord War God was a divine rank expert. However, the area around the Sky Overlord War God's prison carriage was the most heavily guarded place in the small valley. Even the main tent of Princess Dongyu Shui was not as heavily guarded. Therefore, no one, not even a flying insect, could get close to the prison carriage. Only air could get close to the prison carriage. Everyone knew that the entire small valley was filled with hidden dangers. Once Dongyu Shui's sentries were alarmed, it would be impossible for them to attack in the dark. They could only confront Dongyu Shui head-on. "If you don't make a move, and I don't make a move, then who will?" Ji Yufei's clone laughed. I don't care who will make a move, I won't make a move. Fatty said in a determined tone. Is that so? Jiu Fei's clone laughed. Don't even think about sneaking up on me. Fatty stared at Jiu Fei's clone nervously and became vigilant. Jiu Fei was laughing at him, making him panic. Sigh, your reaction is a bit slow. Jiu Fei's clone sighed. In the next moment, Fatty felt as if something had drilled into his body. Moreover, these things were like thin ice lines, swimming around in his body. Needless to say, he was hit again. You're too despicable. Fatty felt depressed. He had been very careful, but he still fell for it. He could only say that the other party's methods were more brilliant than his. There was no helping it, he was inferior. The consequences of being inferior were very serious. Very soon, Fatty's primordial spirit was sealed by a mysterious force. It was as if he had instantly turned into a puppet. His entire body was no longer under his control. What did you do to my body? Don't you dare mess around. Fatty's divine sense fluctuated violently. Sigh, what are you talking about? You're not a woman, why would I mess around? Jiu Fei's clone laughed. So you're going to mess around just because I'm a woman? Fatty was shocked, anxious, and afraid. This guy was really too awesome. This kind of method was really impossible to guard against. This time, he was really completely and utterly defeated. I'm not a casual person. Jiu Fei's doppelganger said seriously. Sigh, brother, stop fooling around. I'll do it, alright? Fatty immediately cowered to the end. You were going to do it anyway. Let's go. Jiu Fei's clone waved his right hand. Fatty, who was controlled by his secret technique, was immediately sent flying out of the tent and smashed into a forest 10 feet away. A black shadow was directly smashed out of the forest by Fatty's self-sacrificial attack. Enemy attack. Chapter 56-79. Fatty was tricked again. There was nothing he could do about it. Although he was extremely smart, he was still a far cry from Jiu Fei's doppelganger. If he wanted to play with Jiu Fei's doppelganger, he would only be playing himself to death. Jiu Fei's doppelganger threw Fatty out again. Fatty was smashed into the forest 10 jong away, knocking out a mysterious man in black who was hiding in the forest. What? Someone actually entered the valley? Dongyu Shui immediately rushed out from the main tent. There's indeed an expert here. The black figure was extremely depressed. He had just entered the valley and was forced out. Expert my ass. Fatty crawled up from the ground and spat out the mud in his mouth. The smell of dried leaves and twigs mixed with the mud made him vomit and almost threw up yesterday's dinner. Wang Zhon, you bastard. Fatty was so angry that he almost vomited blood. You called me a bastard. The voice of Jiu Fei's doppelganger rang in Fatty's mind without any warning. Brother, I was wrong. Is that enough? Upon hearing the voice of Jiu Fei's doppelganger, Fatty immediately cowered. He had no choice but to cower. He was afraid of Jiu Fei's doppelganger. Alright, do your job well, got it? Jiu Fei's doppelganger said. Yes. I'll definitely do my best. Fatty hurriedly nodded. Swish. At this moment, a cold light shot towards Fatty's face. Pa. Fatty felt as if his forehead had been hit hard, and a burning pain spread from it. What? An exclamation was heard. That mysterious black figure directly charged towards the prison carriage of Sky Overlord War God. Wherever it passed, those who tried to stop it were sent flying. Damn it! Fatty was immediately enraged. Does anyone think they can step on me now? This guy called Wang Zhon is so awesome. It's fine if I can't beat him, but now even a sneaky guy wants to give me a beating. If it weren't for his thick skin and thick flesh, his head would have exploded from that attack. Roar. The Fatty was enraged. With a roar, he charged out of the forest like a cannonball, directly pouncing towards the mysterious man in black. Wherever the Fatty passed, people were thrown off their feet and horses were thrown off their feet. Smoke and dust billowed. Is this guy crazy? Dongyu Shui, who happened to witness this scene, was dumbfounded. The others were also shocked. This Fatty was too ferocious. This guy, Ji Yufei's doppelganger was a little surprised to see the fatty flipping out. It seemed like the fatties in the world of cultivation were not to be trifled with. If he could not suppress this guy, he would be the one in trouble. "Give me your life." The fatty roared and instantly caught up to the mysterious black shadow. He then stretched out his hand and directly grabbed at the mysterious black shadow. Powerful origin energy gathered in an instant, and a huge palm the size of a small mountain appeared in the void. It was about to grab the black shadow in its hand. However, the black shadow instantly sped up, and the big hand grabbed nothing but air. "Ayo, you do have some skills." Fatty grinned hideously and disappeared into the void in an instant. Just as the black shadow was about to reach the prisoner's carriage, a figure suddenly appeared beside the black shadow. Bang! With a muffled sound, the black shadow that was charging towards the Sky Overlord War Immortal's carriage was directly sent flying, directly knocking down a tent at the side. "Damn fatty." The man in black rushed out and pounced towards the fatty like a ghost. Obviously, the man in black was also angry. "Who are you calling a fatty?" The fatty directly went up to meet him. Boom! Bang! The two figures moved quickly in the void. Muffled sounds of collisions were constantly heard, and origin energy was mighty. The mighty origin energy ripples directly overturned the prisoner's carriage at the side. The prisoner's carriage fell apart, and the Sky Overlord War Immortal naturally rolled out. Divine-level experts all had thick skin and flesh. The prisoner's carriage fell apart, but the Sky Overlord War Immortal's skin did not even break. However, the Sky Overlord War Immortal's cultivation had been sealed by Ji Yufei's clone, and he could not use his divine-level cultivation at all. Apart from his thick skin and flesh, he did not have any other attributes. The Sky Overlord War Immortal fell flat on his face, which made him so depressed that he almost vomited blood. "I am the high and mighty Sky Overlord War Immortal. Even the Emperor of the Sky Overlord Empire has to address me as Imperial Uncle. When have I ever been so embarrassed?" Moreover, the Sky Overlord War Immortal was bound by iron chains, and it was difficult for him to even turn over. His head and face were stuck to the ground, and his mouth and nose were full of sand. He almost could not breathe. If he suffocated to death, he would be the most aggrieved divine-level expert in the history of the Limitless Realms cultivation. Seeing that the matter had been exposed, and that the fatty was so fierce, the Black Shadow seemed to know that he could not free the prisoner, so he wanted to retreat. However, the fatty had suffered a setback at the hands of Ji Yufei's clone, and he had nowhere to vent his anger. How could he let this guy go so easily? "Want to escape? Dream on," the fatty said angrily as he attacked. Transfiguration Shadow. The figure of the Black Shadow suddenly became blurry, and then with a swish, countless black shadows appeared in the void around the fatty. No one could see the true body of the Black Shadow. Of course, except for Ji Yufei's clone. However, he did not use his eyes, but his powerful divine sense. Ji Yufei's original body was a supreme existence in the infinite prime realm. Even if it was a clone, the strength of his clone's divine sense was far greater than that of a divine-level expert. "I don't care if you are real or fake. I will destroy you completely." The fatty laughed sinisterly. The next moment, his body shook, and in the next moment, countless swordlights rushed out of his body. These swordlights seemed to rush out of his pores, and they were everywhere. Countless black shadows were directly pierced by the divine light. This was an indiscriminate attack. No matter how many clones the Black Shadow created, they would only end up being pierced by the swordlights. Sword. Inside the tent, Ji Yufei's clone sensed the power of the sword principle that suddenly erupted from the fatty's body, and he could not help but be surprised. Even he could not tell that the fatty was an expert in the sword principle. This guy really hid it well. The sword principle. Could this fatty be related to the infinite sword sect? Ji Yufei also played with the sword, and his sword principle cultivation was also quite good. As Ji Yufei's clone, the current Wang Zhon naturally grasped the sword principle and was also proficient in it. As soon as the fatty made his move, Ji Yufei's clone Wang Zhon knew that this guy's sword principle cultivation was also quite good. Wherever the swordlight passed, a few streaks of blood appeared in the void, and the Black Shadow screamed and was sent flying. The black shadow turned around and fled. The fatty directly chased after it. Just as Fatty was chasing after the black shadow, another black shadow broke through the ground and rushed out. It grabbed the overlord war god, who was on the ground, and soared into the sky, rushing out of the valley. Seeing this, Dongyu Shuer could not help but be shocked. The black shadow that broke out of the ground instantly disappeared into the night with the overlord war god. Chapter 5680. The Sky Overlord War Immortal was rescued just like that. Everyone was dumbfounded by the sudden attack of a mysterious person. Many people had yet to react. Wang Zhon, Dongyu Shuer went crazy. With a roar, the entire valley shook. Everyone's ears buzzed as they looked at Dongyu Shuer in fear. She rushed straight to Wang Zhon's tent and barged in. However, only Wang Zhon's mother and sister were in the tent. Wang Zhon was nowhere to be seen. Fatty stood guard near the tent. At this time, the entire valley was in chaos. The Sky Overlord War Immortal was rescued. What should they do? After all, everyone only had one mission this time, which was to escort the Sky Overlord War Immortal back to the imperial capital of the Dongyu Empire. Now that the main character had been rescued, wouldn't it be over for them? Your Highness, in the tent, Wang Lingxue and her mother, who were awakened, looked at Dongyu Shuer nervously. It's fine. You guys rest. Dongyu Shuer said and rushed out. Even though she did not find Wang Zhon, there was still a glimmer of hope in her heart. Wang Zhon must have chased after them. Otherwise, why wouldn't he be here? Wang Zhon was a ruthless person who could torture the Sky Overlord War Immortal. How could it be so easy for those guys to rescue the Sky Overlord War Immortal from his hands? At this time, in the ancient primordial forest, a figure was moving quickly with a middle-aged man who was tied up in chains. Wherever they passed, there was no sound at all. Obviously, the man in black was proficient in the art of stealth, and his cultivation was not low either. Soon, the mysterious figure was far away from the valley where Dongyu Shuer was. He came to an empty space in the forest and threw the Sky Overlord War Immortal on the ground. Shit. The Sky Overlord War Immortal fell flat on his face again. This almost made him break down. He was the high and mighty Sky Overlord War Immortal. Even the Emperor of the Sky Overlord Empire had to listen to him. The events of the past few days had caused the sky-dominating battle god to question his life. What Sky Overlord War Immortal? Wasn't he still tortured like a dog? The man in black said coldly. You, the Overlord battle god spat out the soil in his mouth. He was angry and aggrieved. When had he ever been in such a sorry state? Isn't it? The black shadow sneered, his tone was very disdainful. You think you're awesome? Then why are you still running? Go kill Dongyu Shuer. Sky-dominating battle god roared in anger. My sky-split tower will not do anything without value. The man in black was incomparably cold and arrogant. What? You're from Sky-split tower? The sky-dominating battle god struggled to sit up from the ground. He was shocked when he heard the news. He did not expect the sky-dominating empire to ask for help from the Tongtian sect in order to save him. The Sky-piercing Tower was the #1 assassin organization in the eastern region of the Limitless Realm. It would not be easy to invite the people of the Sky-piercing Tower to take action. One would have to pay a huge price. Not everyone could invite the people of Sky-split Tower to help them. The moment he heard that it was someone from the Tongtian Tower, the Overlord battle god was terrified. He had no choice but to be terrified. The Tongtian Tower was simply too powerful. It was definitely one of the top forces in the East Pole. Before the Tongtian Tower, the Sky-dominating Empire and the East Moon Empire were all *T. They could easily destroy them. If it were not for the fact that the price offered by the Sky-dominating Empire was not too bad, the Tongtian Tower would not accept a rescue mission like this. Meanwhile, the people of the Tongtian Tower were well behaved. They would never do anything without value. Therefore, they would only attack the target. They would not care about anyone else. All right, my mission is complete. Not bad. I've gained quite a lot from this trip, the man in black said calmly. The black-clothed person said indifferently. Her voice was clear and melodious, but it was the voice of a woman. Who said you've completed your mission? At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out from the forest beside them. Who? The woman in black roared and waved her right hand in the direction of the voice. A dozen or so faint rays of light immediately flashed through the air. At the same time, a black figure walked out from the forest. The dozen or so rays of light shot out by the woman in black directly struck the figure. However, the figure still walked out step by step. The woman in black was shocked when she saw this. This guy was hit by her bone-piercing soul-destroying needles, but he seemed to be fine. How was this possible? The bone-piercing soul-destroying needles were a killing weapon of the Tongtian Tower. If they were hit by a cultivator, the needles would travel through the cultivator's body along with their qi and blood. Then, the needles would enter the brain and directly destroy the cultivator's spirit. The assassins of the Tongtian Tower could easily kill their targets with a single strike. "You're that little guy called Wang Zhon?" The woman in black asked coldly after seeing the person's appearance. "You know me." Ji Yufei's clone, Wang Zhon, was slightly surprised. After all, he had only risen to prominence in Blackchilin City for a short time, but the other party had already noticed him. "Looks like I can't be so high-profile in the future. It's safer to play the pig to eat the tiger. Mph, it's impossible not to know." The woman in black sneered. "What should we do?" Ji Yufei's clone rubbed his chin. "What do you mean?" The woman in black was taken aback. "You know me, but I don't know you. That's not fair. How about this, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself." Ji Yufei's clone said with a straight face. "Wang Zhon, are you stupid? Do you know who you're talking to?" Overlord War Immortal, who was sitting on the ground, couldn't help but mock him. "Haven't you been tortured enough by me, you idiot?" Ji Yufei's clone didn't take this so-called Overlord War Immortal seriously at all. "Who are you calling an idiot?" Overlord War Immortal glared at Ji Yufei's clone angrily. He looked as though he wanted to fight with Ji Yufei's clone. The problem was that he didn't even have the right to fight with his life in front of Ji Yufei's clone. One must have the ability to fight with his life. "So what if I call you an idiot?" Ji Yufei's clone said disdainfully. Overlord War Immortal was so angry that his face turned red. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. "You want me to introduce myself?" The woman in black smiled. "Can't I?" Ji Yufei's doppelganger said seriously. "It's not impossible, but it depends on whether you want me to introduce myself or not." The woman in black crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at Ji Yufei's clone mockingly. Her face was covered, and only a pair of big blinking eyes could be seen. "Sigh, after talking so much, we still have to fight. In that case, I'll take you down and talk to you about life." Ji Yufei's clone said helplessly. "Haha," the woman in black laughed. "This guy wants to take me down? What a fool's dream. He doesn't even know who he's facing." Chapter 5681. The people from the Sky Towering Tower made their move. The #1 assassin organization of the East Pole was quite efficient, snatching the Sky Hegemonic Battle Immortal from Dongyu Shue'er's hands. The small valley was heavily guarded, but the Sky Towering Tower only sent 2 people to kidnap the Sky Hegemonic Battle Immortal. This was a very clever move. However, even if the people from the Sky-Piercing Tower were skilled, they were still targeted by Ji Yufei's doppelganger. There was nothing they could do about it. Ji Yufei's doppelganger would not allow someone to kidnap the Overlord Battle God under his nose so easily. If the Sky Towering Tower really did kidnap the Sky Hegemonic Battle Immortal, where would he put his face? Ji Yufei's clone caught up, but he was a little surprised. The person who kidnapped the Sky Hegemonic Battle Immortal was a woman, and she was quite capable too. "Kid, you better scram. Otherwise, I won't go easy on you." The masked woman crossed her arms and said proudly. "TSK, are you that old? How dare you call me a kid?" Ji Yufei's clone said disapprovingly. "Haha, since you want to be tortured, there's nothing I can do. Alright, I'll play with you. Don't cry later." The masked woman smiled. Sigh, Ji Yufei's clone was speechless. Was he really that weak? Swoosh. Ji Yufei's clone suddenly disappeared on the spot. The black-clothed masked woman's pupils constricted. In the next moment, she tilted her head to the side and a hand grabbed her face, almost ripping off her veil. Kid, the masked woman's figure suddenly blurred, as if she had become one with the void around her. Then, a fist directly punched through the blurry figure of the masked woman in black, and the figure immediately dissipated into the void. Ji Fei's doppelganger appeared where the black-clothed masked woman stood. Interesting. Ji Fei's clone also disappeared on the spot. Swoosh. Just as Ji Fei's doppelganger disappeared, a cold light suddenly appeared and cut the afterimage left by Ji Fei's doppelganger into two. The two of them moved quickly in the open space in the forest, exchanging blows at lightning speed. Their speed was extremely fast, but they were actually unable to touch each other. These two. Ba Chen Kuan, who was sitting on the ground, was shocked. Even with his eyesight, he couldn't catch the movements of these two fellows. Sky-dominating war god had no choice but to admit that the combat power of these two people was above his. It was not an injustice for him to lose to Wang Zhon. However, he just could not accept it. After all, Wang Zhon was just an ordinary soldier in Blackchilin City. Bam! After a while, there was finally a muffled sound, and Ji Fei's doppelganger flew backwards. After landing on the ground, it slid several feet on the ground before coming to a stop. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Hee, it turns out to be a little chili pepper. You're quite ruthless. Ji Fei's doppelganger reached out to wipe the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth and said coldly, "Sai, I told you not to play with me, but you didn't believe me. Do you know the pain now?" The masked woman smiled. Ji Fei's doppelganger sneered and then stretched out his right hand that was behind his back. He was holding a hairpin in his right hand. What? The masked woman subconsciously touched her hair. Then, her eyes became even sharper, and a cold murderous intent spread from her body. Her opponent had pulled out her hairpin without anyone noticing. This method shocked and angered her. If he had casually poked between her eyebrows, wouldn't she be dead? A layer of cold sweat immediately appeared on the masked woman's forehead when she thought of this. Why? So you've taken a fancy to my hairpin. Why didn't you say so? If you had said that you liked my hairpin, I would have given it to you. You wouldn't have had to be slapped by me. Are you trying to seduce me? Ji Fei's doppelganger looked at the masked woman with a faint smile. Then, are you seduced? The masked woman looked up and down at Ji Fei's doppelganger. Of course I am. I've found a wife for free. I'll wake up laughing even in my dreams. Ji Fei's doppelganger said proudly. Dream on. Just then, a voice with a murderous intent came from behind Ji Fei's doppelganger. Ji Fei's doppelganger turned around and saw another masked man in black staring at him fiercely. If looks could kill, he would have died many times over. Where did this lunatic come from? Did I offend you? Ji Fei's doppelganger said as he looked at the man in black. It was obvious that this man in black was in cahoots with the masked woman. This guy was the man in black who had been smashed out of the forest by Fatty. Trying to seduce my junior sister? I'll kill you. As the man in black spoke, he pounced towards Ji Fei's doppelganger. The man in black waved his hands and transparent threads that were almost invisible flew out from his hands, entangling Ji Fei's doppelganger. A thin transparent line streaked across a fallen leaf, instantly slicing it in half. Huh! The eyes of Ji Fei's doppelganger flickered. These threads were extremely sharp. If he were to be entangled by these threads, he would definitely be dismembered. At this moment, in the blink of an eye, the threads that flew out from the hands of the man in black interweaved into a large net and shrouded Ji Fei's doppelganger. Heaven-splitting sword. Ji Fei's doppelganger stretched out his right hand and slashed upwards. Then, the large net that was interweaved by the threads was cut in half by the sword light. The man in black was shocked. With a casual wave of his opponent's hand, he had actually struck out an extremely sharp and indestructible sword light. After the sword light broke through the net of threads, it did not dissipate and continued to slash towards the man in black. The man in black was shocked and hurriedly used his movement skills to dodge. Wherever the sword light passed, the soil was splattered and a sword mark that was tens of feet long was left on the ground. Seeing the power of the sword attack from Ji Fei's doppelganger, The man in black was shocked. Even the veiled woman was extremely shocked. This guy's swordsmanship was so powerful. Junior sister, let's go together, the man in black said to the veiled woman. Senior brother, aren't you very powerful? You can deal with him yourself. I'll leave first, the veiled woman said as she grabbed the Sky Overlord warrior god and soared into the sky, breaking through the air. Junior sister, you, the man in black was dumbfounded when he saw this scene. Ayo, the relationship between the two of you is really good. Your junior sister actually abandoned you and fled alone. Chapter 5682. The mysterious masked woman from the sky-piercing tower actually grabbed the sky-dominating war god from the ground and rushed into the sky, fleeing directly. Trying to escape. Ji Fei's clone was taken aback. With a thought, he also rushed into the sky, wanting to chase after them. He could not let this girl save the sky-dominating war god. If he wanted to settle down in the East Moon royal capital and find a place for Wang Zhon's family, the sky-dominating war god could not be saved. This was his proof of allegiance to the East Moon royal lord. With this proof of allegiance, he would have a lot less trouble in the East Moon royal capital. However, someone wanted to be abused, and actually blocked in front of him. You're courting death. Ji Fei's clone directly slapped him. Slap. The guy was directly slapped away by Ji Fei's clone, directly smashing into the forest. Ji Fei's clone had no time to play with this guy. He strolled in the air and immediately used the desolate steps. With one step, he instantly appeared in the air not far behind the black-clothed masked woman. Then, with a second step, he directly appeared in front of the masked woman, blocking her path. What? The masked woman was stunned. How did this guy catch up so quickly? How was this possible? She was very confident in her escape technique, but now, the extreme speed displayed by Ji Fei's flying body was actually much faster than her escape technique. Alright, I don't want to bully the weak, nor do I want to bully a weak girl. Leave him here, and then go back to where you came from. Ji Fei's clone slowly turned around, calmly looking at the masked woman. The masked woman was really angered by this guy in front of her. This guy actually dared to call her a weak girl. This guy really did not know how to write the word death. I need to let this guy see the power of a weak girl. Ji Fei's clone's expression of not taking the masked woman seriously at all directly angered the masked woman. She was someone who had come from the Skysplit Tower. The Skysplit Tower was the #1 assassins organization in the East Pole of the Limitless Realm. It was definitely one of the superpowers in the East Pole. The East Moon Empire and the tyrannical Heaven Empire were all trash before the sky-piercing tower. Even if they weren't trash, they would still be smashed to smithereens. No one had ever dared to underestimate him. You're dead. The black-clothed masked woman glared at Ji Fei's doppelganger. I'm dead. Ji Fei's clone was stunned. You've successfully angered me. The black-clothed masked woman was brimming with killing intent. Ji Fei's doppelganger was really baffled. How could this girl get angry just like that? What's wrong with me? I didn't even touch her. How did I provoke her? I say, you can be angry, but don't let go. At this moment, overbearing Battle Immortal spoke. They were high up in the sky, and the sky hegemonic battle god's cultivation had been sealed by Ji Fei's clone. Naturally, he couldn't use his various abilities. If the black-clothed masked woman loosened her grip, he would fall from the sky. If he fell from such a high place and fell to his death, it would be an unjust death. However, in the next moment, the black-clothed masked woman loosened her grip. Shit! With a whoosh, the sky hegemonic battle god fell directly. At this moment, the sky hegemonic battle god directly had a mental breakdown. I actually flew into the sky. Didn't he tell you not to let go? Seeing this scene, Ji Fei's doppelganger was also stunned. Who does he think he is? Don't let go just because he told me not to let go. The black-clothed masked woman said angrily. Ji Fei's doppelganger was speechless. A crazy woman was really scary. You bastards, the sky hegemonic battle god was depressed. He directly fell from the sky and then smashed into the forest. Why is it so smelly? The sky hegemonic battle god looked around and was almost going crazy. There was a series of squeaking sounds coming from the surroundings. He actually smashed into a big pit that a group of barbaric monkeys usually used to poop. This big pit was full of poop, and he was now covered in a strange fragrance. Ah! An earth-shattering roar sounded from the forest, reverberating in the mountains and startling countless birds in the forest. This guy didn't die from falling from such a high place. Hearing the sorrowful and desperate roar from the forest below, Ji Fei's doppelganger was really surprised. He won't die, but you're dead for sure. As the black-clothed masked woman spoke, she instantly disappeared into the void. Golden body protection, invincible in the world. Without hesitation, Ji Fei's doppelganger directly roared. In the next moment, a golden figure emerged from his body and shrouded him. This was a kind of mystique that Fatty had used before. Given the eyesight of Ji Fei's doppelganger, he could tell at a glance that Fatty's mystique was somewhat fake. Now, he directly imitated Fatty and used it. Of course, even Ji Fei's doppelganger could not learn this kind of mystique at a glance. But with the ability of Ji Fei's doppelganger, it was not difficult for him to imitate it. The golden figure that emerged from Ji Fei's doppelganger's body roared into the sky, and a powerful wave of essence qi erupted from the golden figure, causing the void to tremble. A figure was directly shaken out of the void. The black-clothed masked woman stared at Ji Fei's doppelganger with extreme shock. "Sai, you're clearly the one who bullied me. Why do you look so wronged?" Ji Fei's doppelganger looked at the black-clothed masked woman helplessly. "You bastard." The black-clothed masked woman crushed a talisman in her hand. In the next moment, she directly disappeared into the void, escaping just like that. Ji Fei's doppelganger was stunned. This girl was so aggressive and looked like she wanted to eat him up. Why did she suddenly run away? What was going on? Could it be that this mystique that I used scared her away? Did she see through this mystique? Ji Fei's doppelganger was even more curious about Fatty's identity. After all, this was the mystique that Fatty had used to deal with the dozen sword cultivators during the day. He had merely imitated it. Although the special effects were exactly the same, it was in fact a fake. Ji Fei's doppelganger released his spiritual force and no longer sensed the aura of human cultivators in the vicinity. The two fellows from the sky-piercing tower had actually escaped, and the only cultivator's aura was the aura of the Sky Overlord Battle Immortal in the forest above ground. However, when Ji Fei's doppelganger sensed the scene in the forest, he was immediately dumbfounded. The dignified Sky Overlord Battle Immortal was actually being bullied by a group of barbaric monkeys. Moreover, he was being bullied miserably. The group of barbaric monkeys had actually defecated and peed on the Sky Overlord Battle Immortal's head. The Sky Overlord Battle Immortal was flopping around in a huge fecal pit, and the doppelganger could even smell the stench from afar. Chapter 5683. Overlord War God fell into a cesspool? My god, what's going on? Aya, damn it, he really fell into a cesspool. When Dongyu Shui and the others arrived, they were immediately dumbfounded by the scene. Was the guy flopping around in the cesspit really the sky-dominating battle god of the sky-dominating empire that even the sky-dominating emperor had to bow down to? No one was willing to get too close, because the smell from the cesspool was too strong. At this time, the overlord war god in the cesspool even wanted to die. Someone go and fish him out. Dongyu Shui said to her subordinates. Everyone's expression was very unnatural. They did not want to do anything, but they could not refuse directly. They did not dare to disobey the princess's order. However, someone had to do it. In the end, Dragon Elephant Barbarian stood up. He led his trusted subordinates and dispersed the monkeys around the cesspool, then ordered someone to pull the Overlord War God out of the cesspool with a rope. The Overlord War God was in a sorry state. He had lost count of how many bars of soap he had used, and his skin was torn. However, the fragrance on his body was still strong. It was a fragrance that could not be washed away. At this time, Ji Fei's clone did not care about this and directly returned to the camp. Everyone was curious why the Overlord War God would fall into the cesspool of monkeys. Could it be that Wang Zhong threw him in? How much hatred did he have? Even Dongyu Shuer thought that it was Ji Yufei's clone who threw the Overlord War God into the cesspool. Ji Yufei's clone wanted to humiliate the Overlord War God in this way. Everyone was making wild guesses. Ji Yufei's clone naturally did not care to explain anything, and the Overlord War God would not tell anyone that he fell into the cesspool because he was extremely lucky. The night passed uneventfully. Early the next morning, Dongyu Shuer's team set off again. By noon, they had passed through 800 kilometers of forest. General Long, how far are we from Flying Cloud City? Dongyu Shuer looked into the distance as the team advanced. Not far. Dragon Elephant Barbarian quickly replied. Can we reach before nightfall? Shuer asked again. Spending the night in the wilderness was very dangerous. Who knew what kind of crafty plots those fellows had in the dark? Before they reached East Moon Imperial City, the Overlord War God could be snatched away at any time. Dongyu Shuer couldn't let anyone save the Overlord War God from her hands. He was of great use to her. Yes, at our current speed, we should be able to reach Flying Cloud City before nightfall. Dragon Elephant Man pondered for a moment and said. That's good. Dongyu Shuer said happily. However, she was not happy for long. Suddenly, a rumbling sound came from the mountain path, and everyone felt the vibration coming from under their feet. What happened? What happened? That is, smoke and dust billowed in front of the mountain path, and the rumbling sounds were rapidly approaching. What now? Ji Yufei's doppelganger, who was driving the carriage, frowned and glanced at the fatty beside him. Boss, don't tell me you want me to take action again. When Fatty saw Ji Yufei's doppelganger looking at him, he immediately cursed inwardly. Am I the boss, or are you the boss? Ji Yufei's clone said indifferently. You're the boss, of course you're the boss. Fatty hurriedly smiled apologetically. Isn't that enough? Ji Yufei's clone continued driving the carriage. Fatty, however, was extremely gloomy. Ji Yufei's clone had placed a forbidden technique on him. Currently, he was completely terrified in front of Ji Yufei's clone, and was completely subdued by Ji Yufei's clone. Although he found it difficult to accept his current identity, Ji Yufei's clone was the boss, and he was only the boss's subordinate. To be more precise, he was Ji Yufei's clone's shield. When the time came, he would naturally be the one to take the lead, while Ji Yufei's clone could continue hiding. This was the goal of Ji Yufei's clone. He wanted to keep a low profile, so Fatty's role was very important. Swoosh. At this moment, Dongyu Shuer shot into the sky. She focused her gaze and saw a black torrent rushing over from the mountain path in front of her. This torrent was indestructible, and everything on the mountain path was crushed wherever it passed. A black steel bull? Longxiang Barbarian had also arrived in the sky. He could not help but exclaim when he saw the black torrent charging at them from the mountain path. Hearing Longxiang Barbarian's exclamation, the group immediately became restless. Everyone wore a look of fear. Is this black steel bull something powerful? Ji Yufei's clone asked Fatty next to him. Not at all. It's just a savage beast with thick skin and flesh. Fatty hurriedly replied. Why would they be so afraid if we didn't leave? Ji Yufei's clone glanced at the panicking soldiers around him. One or two of them aren't powerful. They're only equivalent to the greater mastery of the human level, but their defense is a bit insane. Ordinary swords and sabers won't be able to cut through their thick skin. Moreover, these savage beasts live in groups. They'll move in groups of thousands. Fatty explained. What? Ji Yufei's clone finally understood why the people around him were so afraid. Who could stop thousands of black steel bulls charging at them at the same time? Quick, 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 hide in the forest on both sides. King fast. We don't need the carriages anymore. Dongyu Shuer, Longxiang Barbarian, and the rest yelled anxiously. If their team of several thousand were to face the black iron barbaric bulls charging at them head-on, they would be completely annihilated. Only those who could fly would be able to survive. Boss, what should we do? The fatty was completely unperturbed. With his cultivation, the herd of black iron barbaric bulls was unable to harm him at all. Moreover, he did not care about the lives of the others. Fatty, it's time for you to show your prowess. Jiu Fei's clone patted Fatty's shoulder and said. What? Fatty was dumbfounded. What does boss mean by that? He wants me to stop the black steel bulls. He's trying to kill me. At this moment, everyone was rushing towards the forest on both sides of the mountain path. Carriages, prisoner carriages, and these large items were directly thrown on the mountain path. F***CK, save me. Overlord Marshal Immortal, who was in the prison carriage, shouted at the top of his lungs. Save me. The fellow in the other prisoner carriage also shouted for help. As for the dozen or so sword cultivators who were suspected to be from the measureless sword sect, they were tied up and dragged behind the prisoner carriage. No one cared about them now. When the dozen or so sword cultivators saw the black torrent charging at them, they were scared out of their wits. Everyone had escaped, but Jiu Fei's clone and Fatty were still sitting in the carriage calmly, as if they did not see the black torrent charging at them. Wang Zhon, are you crazy? Chapter 5684. No one expected the people in the dark to act so quickly. They had just suffered a setback last night, and now they were back to cause trouble the next day. This time, the people in the dark had actually driven the herd of black iron bulls onto the mountain path. They wanted to use the bulls to annihilate Dongyu Shue'er's escort team. Countless black iron bulls galloped on the mountain path like a black flood, charging towards Dongyu Shue'er's escort team with unstoppable force. Dongyu Shue'er and the other experts directly charged into the sky. They were naturally unafraid of the black iron bulls. However, the several thousand warriors of the East Moon Empire did not know how to fly. Thus, when they learned that the herd of black iron bulls was charging towards them, the team immediately fell into chaos. Under the shouts of Dongyu Shue'er and the other generals, countless warriors rushed towards the forest on both sides of the mountain path in a panic, fighting to be the first to hide in the forest. However, while the people could escape, the carriages and prisoners in the team would suffer. As the mountain path was surrounded by dense trees on both sides, the horses and prisoners could not enter at all. As a result, the carriages, prisoners, and horses were all abandoned. They had no choice but to throw these things away, because if they did not, they would be throwing away their lives. No one wanted to die. Moreover, everyone knew that if they could successfully escort the Overlord of War to the East Moon Imperial capital, it would be a great merit. They might even be able to settle down in the East Moon Imperial capital. The East Moon Imperial capital was the most prosperous and largest city in the East Moon Empire. The people in the East Moon Empire were either rich or powerful. One had to know that not just anyone could live in the East Moon Imperial capital. Ordinary people would not even dare to think about it. As a result, everyone fled faster than rabbits. Very soon, the only things left on the mountain path were the scattered horses and carriages that were filled with various supplies. The most important rations had been thrown away by these warriors. After all, this was a team of several thousand people, a small army. It was not easy to maintain the daily expenses of such an army. These guys are really fast. The mountain path was suddenly empty, causing the fatty to exclaim. They're here. Jiu Fei's clone suddenly said from the carriage. He stared at the corner of the mountain path ahead. Rumble, in the next moment, countless black figures rushed out from the corner of the mountain path, accompanied by a thunderous rumble, and rushed toward Jiu Fei's avatars with unstoppable force. Boom! Bam! Wood splinters flew everywhere. Wherever the black torrent passed, the carriages on the mountain path were immediately smashed into pieces. It was as if there was nothing that could stop this black torrent. Wang Zhon, up in the sky, Dongyu Shue'er was shocked to see that Jiu Fei's clone did not dodge. Wang Zhon's mother and sister were also in the carriage. Without any hesitation, Shue'er took out her East Moon bow, knocked an arrow and shot towards the herd of bulls. Swoosh! The arrow flashed. Boom! The black iron barbarian bulls at the front exploded, but the barbarian bulls at the back instantly charged up. This kind of attack simply couldn't stop this black flood. Fatty, what are you waiting for? Jiu Fei's clone sat in the carriage, extremely calm. At this moment, a strong gust of wind blew, startling the horses in the carriage. They neighed and kicked the ground uneasily. Sigh. The fatty jumped out of the carriage with a helpless expression and landed in front of the carriage. Is he crazy? Who does he think he is? He actually wants to stop the Black Iron Barbarian bulls by himself. This guy's brain is flooded with water. Everyone who saw this scene was indescribably shocked. Even if the fatty was at the divine level, he was only one person. How could he stop the charge of so many Black Iron Barbarian bulls? Brother, what's wrong? Wang Lingshue's voice came from the carriage behind Ji Yufei's clone. It's fine, don't worry. Ji Yufei's clone was still calm. At this moment, the black torrent was less than 100 meters away from the fatty. The strong gust of wind blew the fatty's hair to the back of his head. At this moment, he stood proudly on the mountain path as a powerful aura erupted from his body. At this moment, he seemed to have transformed into a huge mountain, blocking the black torrent that was charging towards him. This guy, seeing this, Ji Yufei's clone still had a calm expression. He had already noticed that this fatty wasn't an ordinary person. Is that fatty an idiot? On a hillside in the distance, there were a few black figures standing, looking at their handiwork. Yes, Ji was scared silly. Otherwise, how could he be so stupid? A black-clothed man on the hill mocked. I bet that he'll be smashed into pieces in the next moment. A black-clothed man said coldly. Haha, is that so? Then I'll bet with you. If his clone doesn't get smashed into pieces, you'll kneel down and eat this thing. How about it? A masked woman chuckled and pointed at a lump of black stuff on the ground next to her. What? The masked man looked at the thing on the ground and was instantly enraged. This guy is too despicable. How dare he ask me to eat *T? I wonder what kind of beast poop that thing belongs to. What if you lose? Although the masked man was furious, he didn't dare to do anything. If I lose, I'll give you this divine artifact. The masked woman waved her right hand, and a divine sword flew out of her hand and stabbed into the ground. Okay, I'll bet. The masked man stared at the divine sword with greed in his eyes. Who wouldn't want a divine artifact? Very well, we'll know soon enough. The masked woman said, looking at the black torrent that was about to hit the fatty. The masked man was also nervous. He didn't think that the fatty could stop the Black Iron bulls. Even a peak immortal state expert wouldn't be able to. Once the Black Iron bulls were disturbed, they would go crazy and destroy everything in their way. With the golden body protecting me, I'm invincible. At this moment, on the mountain path, the fatty roared angrily. His hands formed a seal, and a violent energy wave erupted from his body. Boom! A golden figure rushed out from Fatty's body and enveloped him in an instant. The surrounding leaves were swept up into the air. The fatty was like a deity that had descended from the heavens. In the eyes of Ji Yufei's clone, the fatty actually seemed to have a majestic image. Where did this guy come from? Boom! Following a loud bang, the herd of Black Iron Barbarian bulls instantly collided with the huge golden figure, and a cloud of blood suddenly appeared. Chapter 5685. Fatty was completely subdued by Ji Yufei's clone. If Ji Yufei's clone wanted to keep a low profile, then Fatty would have to take care of everything. This guy had thick skin and was very suitable as a shield. Fatty was depressed, very depressed. However, he had no choice. He couldn't beat this guy called Wang Zhon, so he could only be a laborer. Rumble, the ground shook. On the mountain path, the herd of Black Iron barbaric bulls rushed towards Fatty crazily. Their momentum was even more shocking than the charge of a magnificent army. This black torrent was unstoppable, and the mountain forest shook. At this moment, Ji Yufei's clone was still sitting calmly on the carriage, controlling the horses. Wang Zhon's mother and sister were very confident in Ji Yufei's clone and weren't worried at all. As long as Ji Yufei's clone was around, no one could hurt them. Golden body protection, I'm invincible, Fatty roared, and a terrifying aura surged from his body. The golden figure was like a god of war that had descended from the 9 heavens, emitting a supreme majesty. He really did have that kind of oppressive and invincible aura. Ji Yufei's doppelganger's eyes lit up when he saw this scene. This fatty had actually held back when he was dealing with the cultivators who had cultivated the sword Dao. At this moment, everyone was extremely nervous as they stared at the golden figure on the mountain path and the black torrent that was rushing towards it. Boom! Following an earth-shattering sound, The black torrent directly collided with the golden figure that was standing on the mountain path like a huge mountain. In the next moment, a violent wave of energy swept in all directions. The mountain path was immediately filled with sand and stones, and the sun and moon lost their radiance. The trees on both sides of the mountain path were instantly torn to pieces by the energy storm that swept out. With Fatty as the center, everything within a radius of 30 meters was directly shaken to pieces. The powerful storm swept towards Gu Fei's clone. Gu Fei's doppelganger didn't move at all. The terrifying energy storm swept towards both sides of the carriage. Even his hair and clothes didn't move at all. An invisible force enveloped Gu Fei's clone and the carriage he was in. No matter how much the energy storm raged outside, he and the carriage did not budge. That carriage, that guy, on the hillside in the distance, when the masked men saw this scene, they immediately noticed Gu Fei's doppelganger. Sigh. On the carriage, Gu Fei's doppelganger's heart skipped a beat. He sighed helplessly. He had wanted to keep a low profile, but things didn't go as he wished. He was being targeted again. The moment the men in black on the hillside noticed Gu Fei's doppelganger had already sensed their presence. Looks like my strength doesn't allow me to keep a low profile. However, even so, Gu Fei's doppelganger didn't change his mind. He still wanted to keep a low profile. Gu Fei's doppelganger protected the carriage, but the carriages behind it suffered a calamity. They were all sent flying by the energy storm. Both the Sky Hegemonic War Immortals prisoner carriage and the Large Man's prisoner carriage were sent flying before crashing heavily onto the ground. As for the dozen or so sword cultivators who were tied to the Overlord War God's prison carriage, they were also pulled into the air by the chains. If not for their high cultivation and strong bodies, they would have fallen to their deaths. The soldiers hiding in the woods on both sides of the road were not affected. Roar. At that moment, Fatty let out an earth-shattering roar that attracted everyone's attention. Buzz. An even stronger wave of Yuan Qi erupted from the Fatty's body. The golden body that protected him shook violently and became as large as a small mountain. The golden body seemed like it was going to walk out of the void and become a real golden deity. The black flood was directly blocked, and countless black iron barbaric bulls that slammed into the golden figure were directly turned into clouds of blood mist. In just a short while, hundreds of black iron bulls had already died. However, the black iron bulls were still charging forward madly. They couldn't stop at all. Dongyu, Shui and the others in the sky were shocked. That Fatty was actually able to block the black iron barbarian bulls by himself. How was that possible? That fellow was too amazing. Could it be that he was a saint rank existence? A divine level can block a herd of black iron bulls. On the distant hillside, the black-clothed men were also dumbfounded. "Ba Hong, you've lost. Eat that thing." The masked woman pointed at the black shit on the ground and said to one of the masked men. "What?" The masked man called Ba Hong couldn't help but be shocked when he heard that. "It's just a joke. You don't have to be so serious," Ba Hong said hesitantly. "TSK." The masked woman sneered. "Do you people from the tyrannical Sky Empire treat your words as farts?" The masked man called Ba Hong was both shocked and furious. "What? Still not eating? Do you want me to feed you?" The masked woman's voice instantly turned cold, and there was a hint of killing intent in her tone. "If you're willing to bet, you have to be willing to accept your loss. If I lose, you'll get my divine sword. Unfortunately, it's not fated with you." The masked woman's voice became even colder. "Can you give me some face?" A middle-aged man in black suddenly said. "TSK, give you face? Do you think you have any face here?" The masked woman sneered. The middle-aged man's expression immediately became awkward. "Are you going to eat it or not?" The masked woman was a little angry. "Granduncle," the young man called Ba Hong looked at the middle-aged man. "Sir, don't go too far." The middle-aged man's expression became very unsightly. "Ha ha," the masked woman laughed loudly. "So what if I'm bullying you? Can't you afford to?" Ba Hong and his granduncle were shocked. They were furious, but they didn't dare to show it because they couldn't afford to offend this masked woman. "Ba Hong, you'd better eat shit obediently." Don't anger our junior sister. If she gets angry, even I'm afraid. A masked man beside the masked woman suddenly said. B.A. Hong and his granduncle didn't say anything. The atmosphere on the hillside became very tense. Aya, what are you guys doing? At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Then, another person appeared on the hillside. It's you. When they saw who it was, everyone on the hillside was shocked. This person was Wang Zhon. Wasn't he on the distant mountain path? Why did he suddenly appear here? The veiled woman abruptly looked up the mountain path and saw that Ji Yufei's clone was in the carriage. The coachman's seat was empty. So fast, so powerful. Chapter 5686. It's you guys again. Just as the fatty was fighting against the black iron barbaric bulls, Ji Yufei's clone suddenly appeared on the hill where the mysterious black-clothed man was. Ji Yufei's clone realized that the location of the hill was really good. Standing here, he could see the exciting scene unfolding on the mountain path ahead. These guys really know how to pick a place. It seems like these guys are stirring up trouble again. They even found a good place to watch the show. Wang Zhon. The masked woman was taken aback when she saw Ji Yufei's doppelganger. What are you guys doing? Is someone trying to eat *T? Ji Yufei's clone crossed his arms and looked at B.A. Hong with a smile that wasn't a smile. This sword isn't bad. As Ji Yufei's clone spoke, he walked forward and reached for the divine sword that was stuck in the ground. Me. The masked woman waved her right hand, and the divine sword that was stuck in the ground flew up and was grabbed by her. My things aren't that easy to take. The masked woman stared at Ji Yufei's clone and said. Is that so? Ji Yufei's clone smiled and didn't say anything. The masked woman then glanced at B.A. Hong and said, What are you waiting for? Why aren't you eating that thing on the ground? B.A. Hong looked at his granduncle. However, his granduncle directly turned his face to the side. Chick, this is a little too much. You're actually forcing people to eat *T. Ji Yufei's doppelganger laughed. This girl's taste was too heavy. Does this have anything to do with you? Wait, what did you say just now? What did you call me? The masked lady in black furrowed her brows as she glared at Ji Yufei's clone. *CK, looks like I'm out of luck. I've met a tigress. Ji Yufei's clone looked at the masked woman in ridicule. Wang Zhon, do you know who you're talking to? You're simply courting death. B.A. Hong angrily shouted at Ji Yufei's clone. Hey, what's wrong with you? This chick is already forcing you to eat powder, and you're still helping her? You're really a dog. Ji Yufei's doppelganger said indifferently. What did you say? In front of the young miss, you are nothing. B.A. Hong pointed at Ji Yufei's clone's nose and scolded. Sigh. Ji Yufei's clone shook his head helplessly. A moment later, he appeared in front of B.A. Hong with a whoosh. Pa. Ji Yufei's doppelganger waved his hand and slapped B.A. Hong's face. B.A. Hong let out a blood-curdling scream and staggered a few steps to the side. He opened his mouth and spat out a few bloody teeth. The left side of his face immediately swelled up, and an incomparably clear palm print appeared on his face. Holy shit! B.A. Hong opened his mouth to curse again. Pa. Pa. No, Pa. Ji Yufei's doppelgangers immediately slapped the guy a dozen times, causing him to become muddle-headed and swollen like a pig's head. Wang Zhon, you're courting death. B.A. Hong's granduncle could not stand it anymore. B.A. Hong was a member of the Sky Tyrant royal family after all. Although he was a good-for-nothing, how could he allow an outsider to bully and humiliate him like this? He roared angrily and directly grabbed the hilt of the saber at his waist. He was about to draw his saber and attack Ji Yufei's doppelganger. However, a figure flashed and Ji Yufei's doppelganger instantly appeared in front of him. With a stretch of his left hand, the doppelganger directly put the saber back into its scabbard. Pa. Ji Yufei's doppelganger's right hand danced left and right, directly rewarding the middle-aged man in black with a dozen slaps. After that, the figure flashed and Ji Yufei's doppelganger instantly retreated 2 zhong away. He stood with his hands behind his back and indifferently looked at the crowd. Finally his eyes fell on the masked woman. The masked woman and her senior brother were dumbfounded by this scene. They originally thought that they had underestimated Wang Zhong. Who would have thought that not only did they not underestimate Wang Zhong, but they also severely underestimated him. Ji Yufei's doppelganger's moves were smooth like flowing water. After he was done, Ba Hong and his granduncle became swollen like a pig. Ba Hong was enraged. His name was Ba Hong and his cultivation was all on the saber. Now, he had not even drawn his saber out of its scabbard and was already swollen like a pig. His mouth moved and directly spat out a few teeth. You what? Are you not convinced? Ji Yufei's doppelganger said indifferently. Do you think I can be convinced? Ba Hong was enraged. Yes. Ji Yufei's doppelganger nodded. All right, then I will give you a chance to attack. He beckoned at Ba Hong with his finger. When the masked woman and her senior brother saw this, they immediately retreated. Wang Zhong, you are dead. Ba Hong sneered as he stared at Ji Yufei's doppelganger. His granduncle was the #1 saber in the tyrannical Sky dynasty. As long as his granduncle drew his saber, his opponent would be killed in one move. As long as his granduncle drew his saber, Wang Zhong would be dead. I am dead. Ji Yufei's doppelganger looked at Ba Hong with a smile that was not a smile. You are dead. Ba Hong stared at Ji Yufei's doppelganger as a violent saber aura erupted from his body. He stretched out his right hand and spread his fingers. Interesting. Facing the incoming sharp saber aura, Ji Yufei's doppelganger still stood with his hands behind his back, looking calm and relaxed. I'm going to faint. Why aren't you making a move? Are you still accumulating power? After a while, Ji Yufei's doppelganger was getting impatient. I am giving you a chance to attack. Otherwise, you would have been killed by me long ago. Even making a move is so troublesome. Are you pretending to be an expert? I say, why don't you attack? Ji Yufei's doppelganger was depressed. Wang Zhong, why are you in such a hurry? Are you in a hurry to reincarnate? Ba Hong jumped out once again. The masked woman and her senior brother, who were watching the show from the side, were also somewhat depressed. What was going on with this #1 saber god in the tyrannical Sky dynasty? Was he someone with an undeserved reputation? Ba Hong's aura was still rising. I will send you to reincarnate first. Ji Yufei's doppelganger said as he waved his right hand. Ba Hong's head was directly sent flying. Even in his dreams, Ba Hong never thought that he would die. Moreover, he was killed in one move. He was a member of the royal family of the tyrannical Sky dynasty. His future was boundless. However, none of this had anything to do with him. However, with his death, he wouldn't have to eat shit anymore. When Ji Yufei's doppelganger suddenly killed Ba Hong, it gave the masked woman a fright. This guy is not simple. He is decisive in killing. He is quite a character. The masked woman couldn't help but have a higher opinion of Ji Yufei's doppelganger. Kill. Clang. Ba Hong's saber was finally unsheathed. The saber light was even more dazzling than the divine sun in the sky. The cold saber aura spread in all directions. The momentum was truly astonishing. This slash could only be described with one word, and that was fast. It was truly fast. In Ba Hong's eyes, his saber had already reached the limit. No one in the god realm could dodge his saber. Chapter 5687. The tyrant blade of the tyrannical Sky dynasty was undoubtedly the #1 blade cultivator in the tyrannical Sky dynasty. He was also the only blade cultivator in the tyrannical Sky dynasty who had cultivated to the divine level. His saber was fine when it was not drawn, but once it was drawn, it was fatal. Of course, Tyrant Blade was not as famous as his big brother, Tyrant Battle Immortal. It was precisely because the two brothers were at the divine rank that they were able to firmly suppress the overlord of the Overlord Sky Emperor. Even if the two brothers were capable enough to shock the Overlord didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction. After all, these two brothers were both at the divine level, and they controlled the military of the tyrannical Sky Empire. The military was filled with their trusted subordinates. If the tyrannical Heavenly Emperor was dishonest, they wouldn't mind changing someone else to be the Overlord. Therefore, the current Overlord of Tyrant Sky Overlord was really sullen. He had to listen to the two brothers for everything and he was simply a puppet. The fact that the Sky Overlord Battle Immortal had been captured had actually made the Sky Overlord somewhat happy and gloating. However, they had to save the Overlord War God. Even if they knew that the East Moon Empire wanted to use the Overlord War God as bait to catch a bigger fish, they still had to bite that bait. Thus, B.A. Dao, the second brother of B.A. Chenkuan, B.A. Tian, arrived. B.A. Dao was actually very cautious. He did not hesitate to pay a great price to get the Skysplit Towers people to help him. However, it was all for naught. The Skysplit Towers people suffered at the hands of Ji Yufei's clone. Now, Ji Yufei's doppelganger had appeared in front of them and killed B.A. Hong, the rising star of the Sky Tyrant royalty. He even slapped the Tyrant blade a dozen times in front of the people of the Sky-reaching tower, turning the Tyrant Sky Empire's #1 Saber Master into a pig's head. This made Domineering Blade so ashamed that he wanted to go crazy. Clang! The moment his aura reached its peak, B.A. Dao finally made his move. Saber light flashed and saber chi surged. This saber seemed to have come from hell, bringing with it an endless amount of killing intent. In an instant, it arrived before Ji Yufei's clone. B.A. Dao smirked. He was very confident in his saber draw kill. In his eyes, Ji Yufei's doppelganger was already a dead man. This slash was extremely fast. This blade was extremely dazzling. This slash was extremely domineering. This saber strike was indestructible. Even Skysplit Tower's junior sister was stunned by this strike. If a person were to focus on a saber for countless years, the power that the saber could unleash in his hands would definitely be shocking. The might of Tyrant Saber's saber surpassed the expectations of the Skysplit Tower's two great assassins. However, in the next moment, Tongtian Tower's little junior sister and her senior brother were dumbfounded. Their eyes almost fell out of their sockets. The scene in front of them was unbelievable. The saber light disappeared in an instant, and the chilling saber chi that had spread out in all directions suddenly dissipated. The saber that seemed to be able to split heaven and earth into two halves suddenly stopped above the head of Ji Yufei's doppelganger. The blade had already touched the hair on the head of Ji Yufei's doppelganger, and a few strands of hair floated down from the air. However, the divine saber that was flickering with a cold light could no longer slash down. It was frozen just like that and did not move. What caused the divine saber to suddenly stop above the head of Ji Yufei's doppelganger were two fingers. That's right, two fingers. Ji Yufei's doppelganger, Wang Zhon, had actually used two fingers to clamp Tyrant Saber's saber strike with all his might. How is this possible? Tyrant Saber's shock was no small matter. He never dreamed that this black-robed young man would be so powerful that he could use only two fingers to clamp his saber. This was a saber strike that he had unleashed with all his might. Even his big brother, Sky-dominating Martial Immortal, did not have this ability. Crack! At that moment, Ji Yufei's doppelganger smirked. In the next moment, the two fingers that clamped the saber's blade exerted force, and the divine saber directly broke into two. Ji Yufei's doppelganger casually waved his hand that was clamping the broken saber. Fart! Half of the saber's blade directly pierced Tyrant Saber's left shoulder. His entire body flew out and rolled on the ground. Impossible! How is this possible? Tyrant Saber muttered to himself in a daze. B.A. Dao murmured to himself in a daze. His opponent had casually attacked, and an invisible sword chi had entered his body, directly crippling his cultivation. He was the #1 saber in the Sky-dominating Imperial Court. How could he be defeated by a young man, and so thoroughly at that? In my eyes, there is nothing impossible in this world. Ji Yufei's doppelganger stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "This pretentious act." On the mountain path, Fatty, who was desperately blocking the herd of black ironballs, was incomparably depressed when he saw this scene. At that moment, several figures rushed up the small hill. "Take him down!" With a shout, several figures directly rushed towards the masked woman and Tyrant Saber, who was lying on the ground. Ha ha ha, the masked woman let out a crisp laughter. In the next moment, she and her senior brother directly soared into the sky and directly stepped on the air. In the blink of an eye, they were already far away. "Young man, just you wait. I will look for you next time to have some fun." The masked woman's voice came from afar. Why didn't you do anything? Did you just let those two escape? Dong Yushui came to the side of Ji Yufei's doppelganger and said unhappily. Ji Yufei's doppelganger did not say anything. He only looked in the direction that the masked woman disappeared in and fell into deep thought. The Sky Connecting Tower was a colossal organization. There would definitely be saint-level experts in such a super organization. If the Sky Connecting Tower sent saint-level experts to deal with them, they would definitely be in trouble. What should they do? Ji Yufei's doppelganger knew very well that with his current cultivation and battle prowess, even if he grasped a supreme secret technique like the 9 secrets of the immortal path, there was no way he could defeat saint-level experts. Not to mention that the Sky Connecting Tower was an assassin organization. They would not act openly. They were assassins, so they would definitely act in the dark. This was their specialty. Did you hear that? Dong Yushui said loudly. This guy is actually treating me like I don't exist. This made her very angry. She was the most beloved princess of the East Moon Royal Lord. Dong Yushui's princess temper exploded. Heard what? Ji Yufei's doppelganger subconsciously said to Dong Yushui. I'm going to die from anger. Dong Yushui stomped her foot and was about to leave. Tyrant Blade. How is this possible? This guy is Tyrant Hong. At this moment, Dong Yushui finally saw the black-clothed middle-aged man who was dragged over by Dragon Elephant Man and Yang Feiyun like a dead dog, as well as Tyrant Hong who was lying on the side with his head separated from his body. You actually defeated Tyrant Blade. Dong Yushui was extremely excited. This guy was the #1 blade of the tyrannical Sky Empire. Moreover, Tyrant Blade and Tyrant War God were brothers. These two brothers controlled almost all the power in the tyrannical Sky Empire, directly taking over the tyrannical Sky Emperor. Ha! Dong Yushui laughed excitedly. Tyrant War God and Tyrant Blade God had both become her prisoners. This was a great merit. It was not hard to imagine that the tyrannical Sky Empire would soon fall into chaos. Rumble. While Dong Yushui was laughing, the entire hillside and the ground shook. At the same time, Ji Yufei's doppelganger keenly sensed that the aura of the world had changed. The world has changed. Chapter 5688. Rumble. The entire world suddenly shook. It was very sudden, but the shaking only lasted for a very short period of time before disappearing. However, Ji Yufei's clone sensed that this part of the world had changed. The grand Tao laws of the world had undergone a subtle change. How could this be? Ji Yufei's clone was indescribably shocked. The grand Tao of the world, which was also the change of the grand Tao laws of the world, was actually not something strange. Given his main body's cultivation, he had long surpassed the human realm and heavenly realm. The grand Tao laws of the human realm and heavenly realm were nothing in front of Ji Yufei's main body. He could change the grand Tao of the entire human realm with a single thought. However, this was the limitless realm, the highest level superworld that Ji Yufei knew of. The grand Tao of such a world was not so easy to change. The grand Tao of the limitless realm should be incomparably powerful and stable. However, Ji Yufei's clone sensed a different grand Tao. Could it be that there were actually different grand Taos in the limitless realm? How could this be possible? Ji Yufei's doppelganger was also startled by this sudden thought. It was impossible for two grand wills to appear in the same world. Unless this world was invaded by another world, like a supreme existence wanting to refine this world. However, could there actually be someone crazy enough to want to refine the entire limitless realm? The thought in Ji Yufei's clone's mind quickly dissipated. However, what he did not know was that at this moment, the easternmost region was in chaos. Boom! With a loud sound, a towering devil mountain in the easternmost region suddenly exploded. A devil coffin appeared out of nowhere, emitting a monstrous demonic aura. Endless demonic aura converged into a huge devil shadow that roared towards the sky. Its demonic might was matchless, causing billions of living beings to tremble. In a certain sacred land filled with vast immortal aura, an immortal Tao ancestor who had been in seclusion for God knows how many years suddenly woke up from his meditation and opened his eyes. In the next moment, Endless immortal aura surged out from the immortal Tao ancestor's body. The immortal aura spread for billions of miles, causing the immortal aura in the entire sacred land to soar. Immortal Tao ancestor? The demon coffin soared into the sky. At the same time, in some other forbidden areas of the easternmost pole, there were also giants who had disappeared for countless years. This made the giants of the current era unable to sit still. Another reincarnation? A helpless sigh came from a huge palace at the peak of the Wichu sacred mountain in the East Pole. Its master has come out of seclusion? Countless rays of light rushed toward the palace at the peak of the divine mountain from all directions. Tens of thousands of immortals came to pay their respects. Moreover, it was not only the East Pole, but also the South Pole, the West Pole, the North Pole, and the Central Pole. Those giants who had disappeared for countless years all jumped out. The Limitless Realms cultivation world, which had been silent for countless years, suddenly burst into an uproar. The patriarchs of the sects and clans that had been in decline for countless years returned, and these clans immediately became powerful again. Then, they went on expeditions everywhere and began to encircle their territories. The entire cultivation world of the Limitless Realm began a new round of shuffling without any warning. At the center of the easternmost land, the ground suddenly split open, and a huge city broke out of it, slowly rising into the sky. An extremely terrifying might emanated from the huge city, suppressing everything in its surroundings. The huge city was bound by chains, and every chain was connected to the ground. The huge city was bound in the sky, and every chain was pulled taut. Sigh. A figure appeared near the huge city. He stood quietly for a long time before letting out a long sigh and disappearing. The world has changed, and reincarnation has appeared. It's going to be chaotic again. An ancient voice with a hint of helplessness reverberated between heaven and earth. Such huge cities did not just appear in the easternmost pole. The South Pole, the West Pole, the North Pole, and the Central Pole all broke out of their seals and appeared in the world. As the huge cities appeared, the heavenly Tao laws of the entire limitless realm became unstable. Then, a huge spatial crack appeared in the void between the heavens and the earth. It was unknown where these spatial cracks led to. The appearance of each spatial crack caused a commotion. Countless experts gathered towards the spatial cracks, and the super forces immediately sent experts to guard these spatial cracks. Roar. A spatial crack that appeared in the easternmost land stretched across the sky. A terrifying roar came from the spatial crack, and a huge figure appeared indistinctly in the spatial crack. A violent aura swept across the sky and earth. Gu Fei's clone had not expected this to happen. At this moment, the fatty displayed his divine might, and directly smashed the black iron raging ox fist with his own strength, resolving the crisis. Their team continued on their way. The world has changed. In the carriage, the fatty looked up at the sky, and his expression was extremely solemn. You sensed it too? Gu Fei's clone looked at the fatty in surprise. He thought that only he could sense the changes in the world, because his main body's cultivation was at the infinite prime realm. Naturally, his perception of the world was also at the infinite prime realm. However, this fatty had sensed it too. Could it be that this fellow was also an old antique? Who cares? This fellow still had his own restrictive technique on him, so he was not afraid of this fellow flying into the sky. Along the way, the team directly arrived at Flying Cloud City. This Flying Cloud City was not as large as Black Chilean City, but there were tens of thousands of citizens in the city, and there were also many villages and stockades scattered around Flying Cloud City. The people here are all tough. When Gu Fei's clone drove the carriage into the city, he found that whether it was the people outside or inside the city, as long as they walked on the road, they more or less carried weapons. Outside the city, many people wore animal skins. Not only did they carry sabers, swords, and spears, they even carried bows and arrows. However, the people inside the city were much more refined. Most of the people in the city had sabers or swords on their waists, or short swords or short knives on their belts. It's not easy to survive. The fatty on the side. I dare not say for others, but if you want to live, I'm afraid that no one can kill you. Gu Fei's clone laughed. Don't, boss, don't say that. You can kill me if you say that. the fatty hurriedly said. In front of Ji Yufei's clone, he directly put on a cowardly expression. Is that so? Ji Yufei's clone smiled and did not say anything else. At this moment, the team that had just entered the city suddenly stopped. The streets were filled with onlookers. Is this the legendary Sky Hegemon War God? Even the Sky Hegemon War God was captured. Her Highness is awesome. Why are there 3 prison carriages? Which one is the Sky Hegemon War God? Both sides of the street were crowded with people. The news that Dongyu Shuere had captured the #1 war god of the Sky Hegemon Empire in Black Chilean City had already spread to Flying Cloud City. Therefore, when Dongyu Shuere's team arrived at Flying Cloud City, the entire city was in an uproar. Good dogs don't block the way, get out of my way. At the very front of the group, Dongyu Shuere, who had been leading the group on a tall horse with a smug expression, suddenly widened her eyes and raised her eyebrows. She waved her whip and pointed at a young man in front of her. Sister, your temper is still as fierce as ever. Chapter 5689. The situation in the boundless realm had changed. The antiques that had long been thought to have vanished in the annals of history had reappeared. The appearance of the 5 sealed ancient cities in particular made the various heavyweights even more restless. Just as the entire boundless realm was in turmoil, the soaring cloud city where Ji Yufei's clone was located remained calm as usual. This world-class upheaval had yet to affect the city in the mountains. Even the entire East Moon Empire had yet to be affected. However, the arrival of Ji Yufei's clone and Dongyu Shuere caused the city in the mountains to boil. Her Highness has entered the city with the Overlord War God. The explosive news immediately spread throughout the entire soaring cloud city. The entire city was in an uproar, and countless people surged towards the main street of the city gates from all directions. The Overlord War God was a heavenly figure to the people of Soaring Cloud City. He was an awesome existence that even the Lord of the Overlord Empire had to be wary of. It could be said that more than half of the current territory of the Overlord Empire had been conquered by the Overlord War God. Even the East Moon Empire had always been at a disadvantage in the war against the Overlord Empire. If it were not for Black Chilean City blocking the Overlord Empire's advance, the East Moon Empire would probably have been destroyed long ago. When the news that Dongyu Shuere had actually captured the Overlord War God alive in the Battle of Black Chilean City, everyone in Soaring Cloud City was naturally extremely excited. However, due to the cover-up of some people, the news of Dongyu Shuere capturing the Overlord War God alive had yet to reach the East Moon royal capital. This was because the merit of capturing the Overlord War God was just too great. Countless people were green with envy. Previously, the greatest of the younger generation of the Hu clan, who was also Dongyu Shuere's fiancé, wanted to take away her merit. Now, the procession into the city suddenly stopped, because an uninvited guest had blocked their path. Furthermore, what surprised Dongyu Shuere was that she did not even see the shadow of the city lord of Soaring Cloud City. She was the princess of the East Moon Empire. She had come to Soaring Cloud City, yet he, a mere city lord, actually did not come out to welcome her. Was he looking to die? The crime of looking down on the royal family of the East Moon was not something a mere city lord of Soaring Cloud City could bear. However, when Dongyu Shuere saw the well-dressed young man with a folding fan blocking the way, she immediately understood what was going on. Imperial brother, instead of enjoying your life in the imperial capital, you've come here to be a road-blocking dog. If Imperial father were to find out, your position as the second in line to the throne would be in imminent danger. Dongyu Shuere sneered. When the well-dressed man heard this, a cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes, but he wasn't angry. Royal sister, I heard that you've captured the Sky Hegemonic Battle Immortal alive, so I've specially come to welcome you. I've already arranged a banquet in the City Lord's mansion. I hope that royal sister will do me the honor. The well-dressed young master waved his fan and said with a faint smile. Haha, royal brother Yuanliang, I've already called you a dog, and you're still not angry. You're really a man who does great things. Dongyu Shuere laughed. Hearing this, Dongyu Yuanliang remained calm, as if he didn't care at all. When Ji Yufei's clone, who was acting as a coachman, saw this, he couldn't help but have a higher opinion of the well-dressed young master. This person was extremely shrewd, and he was extremely calm. Such a person was either a fool or an ambitious and ruthless person. Since this guy was a member of the Dongyu royal family, and even the second in line to the throne, he was definitely not a fool. Therefore, this guy had the bearing of a formidable character. Royal sister, you must be joking. Please. As Dongyu Yuanliang spoke, he turned his body and made an inviting gesture. All right, I'd like to see what you're up to. As she spoke, Dongyu Shuer swung her whip. The group continued forward. At this moment, the city lord's mansion was decorated with lanterns and streamers. A group of important figures of the city had gathered outside the gate, and everyone was looking at the street. Greetings, Your Royal Highness. When Princess Dongyue's group arrived at the city lord's mansion, those people immediately knelt before Dongyu Shuer. Where's Chen Aotian? Dongyu Shuer leapt off her horse, completely ignoring these people. Chen Aotian was the city lord of Soaring Cloud City. He was not a member of Dongyu Yuanliang's faction, but a subordinate of the first in line to the throne, the crown prince of the Dongyu Empire. Dongyu Shuer and the crown prince shared the same mother, while Dongyu Yuanliang was born of the imperial concubine. Moreover, the empress of the Dongyu Empire had already passed away many years ago. Moreover, ever since the empress passed away, the Dongyu imperial lord had not conferred another empress. Dongyu Yuanliang and his mother obviously wanted to ascend to the throne. One wanted to be the empress, while the other wanted to be the crown prince. The imperial court of the Dongyu Empire was already clearly divided into two factions. One was the crown prince's faction, and the other was Dongyu Yuanliang's faction. Therefore, Dongyu Shuer obviously did not like this second brother of hers. City Lord Chen is not feeling well, so he cannot come to greet Your Royal Highness. Please forgive him, Your Royal Highness. An armored general walked out from the welcoming group and bowed to Dongyu Shuer. Chen Fang. Dongyu Shuer could not help but be surprised when she saw him. He was the younger brother of City Lord Chen Aotian, Chen Fang. Why would Chen Fang appear here? Actually, from the moment Dongyu Shuer saw Dongyu Yuanliang, she knew that the City Lord of Soaring Cloud City was most likely done for. With Dongyu Yuanliang's abilities, killing Chen Aotian would be as easy as crushing an ant. It seemed that something must have happened to Chen Aotian. However, if something had happened to Chen Aotian, why would Chen Fang still appear here? This was worth considering. Royal sister, please. Dongyu Yuanliang smiled. TCH, do you think I'm afraid you'll eat me? Dongyu Shuer smiled. With Jiyu Fei's clone and the fatty as her trump cards, she was not afraid that her dear second brother would cause any trouble at all. In front of outsiders, Dongyu Shuer and Dongyu Yuanliang were on good terms. After all, they were real siblings, even though they did not share the same mother. Wang Zhon, come with me. Fatty, you guard the prisoner's carriage. The rest of you, set up camp here. Dongyu Shuer ordered. The square in front of the city lord's manor was very wide anyway. It was more than enough for a team of thousands to set up camp here. At this time, the square was filled with people. Everyone wanted to catch a glimpse of the Sky Overlord War God. However, when they really saw the Sky Overlord Martial God, who was tied up like a rice dumpling, they were all very disappointed. Was this old man really the #1 martial god of the tyrannical Sky Empire, whose name shook the world? Say, you know it's a Hongmen banquet, yet you still dare to come. You sure have guts. Jiyu Fei's clone, who had entered the city lord's manor with Dongyu Shuer, transmitted his voice to the princess beside him. TCH, with a personal guard like you around, what do I have to be afraid of? Dongyu Shuer replied with a voice transmission. Chapter 5690. At this time, Flying Cloud City looked very lively on the surface. Lanterns and streamers were everywhere. Countless citizens rushed to the streets to celebrate Princess Dongyue's great victory in Blackchelene City and the capture of the legendary dominating war immortal. It should be noted that the East Moon Empire had always been at a disadvantage in all the battles against the tyrannical empire. The East Moon Empire's army had always been oppressed by the tyrannical empire's army. But now, Princess Dongyu had actually defeated the Overlord War God. This was an unprecedented victory. In Soaring Cloud City, Princess Dongyue's prestige soared to the peak. Just as the entire city was celebrating Dongyu Shuer's victory, Dongyu Yuanliang, who was also the second-in-line successor of the East Moon Empire, was welcoming Dongyu Shuer into the city lord's residence. As Dongyu Shuer was escorted into the city lord's residence, Dongyu Yuanliang secretly shot a glance at one of his confidants. The confidant immediately turned around and left quietly. Ji Yufei's clone, who was following behind Dongyu Shuer, witnessed the entire scene. As expected, he's up to something. Ji Yufei's clone could not help but look forward to what this guy could do. Dongyu Yuanliang was only at the peak of the heaven realm. Even if he could break through to the half-step deity realm at any time, it would be useless. In the eyes of Ji Yufei's clone, he was still trash that could be killed with a single slap. In the main hall of the city lord's residence, there were dozens of tables, and countless servants were busying themselves around them. Everyone, take a seat. Dongyu Yuanliang waved his sleeve and directly walked to the throne in the middle of the hall. He walked with majestic steps, and as he looked around, he gave off a dignified aura. He actually ignored Dongyu Shuer and did not order anyone to bring her to a seat. Clearly, he was trying to put Dongyu Shuer in his place. Dongyu Shuer smiled and did not say anything. At this moment, the nobles of Soaring Cloud City and the people brought by Dongyu Yuanliang took their seats. Some even looked at Dongyu Shuer mockingly, waiting to watch a show. "Royal sister, sit anywhere. Don't be so polite with me," Dongyu Yuanliang, who was sitting on the throne, said indifferently. Dongyu Shuer smiled. "Are you sure? Of course, there's no need to be so reserved between us siblings." Dongyu Yuanliang smiled. "All right then, I won't stand on ceremony with you." With that, Dongyu Shuer directly walked towards Dongyu Yuanliang and arrived below the throne. "You, get down here." Dongyu Shuer crossed her arms and looked coldly at Dongyu Yuanliang on the throne. "What?" Dongyu Yuanliang was dumbfounded. Dongyu Shuer actually told him to scram? The entire hall immediately fell silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Dongyu Yuanliang in shock. No one expected Dongyu Shuer to sit on the throne of the second prince. Dongyu Yuanliang looked around. "Sister, this joke isn't funny." No matter how shrewd he was, Dongyu Yuanliang couldn't help but be angered. "I don't have time to joke with you." Dongyu Shuer's tone became extremely cold. At this moment, Ji Yufei's clone, Dragon Elephant Man, and young Feiyun also stood behind Dongyu Shuer. Only Ji Yufei's clone, Dragon Elephant Man, and young Feiyun followed Dongyu Shuer into the city lord's residence. The others were outside. In other words, everyone in the city lord's residence was Dongyu Yuanliang's people. Has the princess gone mad? How dare she talk back to His Highness the Second Prince? This is really unwise. Many people in the hall transmitted their voices. In fact, everyone knew that the second prince and the princess were siblings on the surface, but they were secretly fighting against each other. "Get down here. Do you want me to ask you to get down here?" Dongyu Shuer did not take her second brother seriously at all. If it weren't for him slandering her father and wanting to take the number one of the younger generation of the Hu clan as the son-in-law, would she need to run away from the marriage? After all, according to the rules of the East Moon Empire, after a princess got married, she would have to move out of the palace and live in the son-in-law's residence. Dongyu Shuer naturally knew that her second brother was in a hurry to kick her out of the palace. He wanted to isolate His Highness the Crown Prince. Dongyu Shuer had long seen through her second brother's intentions. "How dare you? Although you're a princess, you can't be rude to His Highness the Second Prince." An elder beside Dongyu Yuanliang, who had been silent all this while, suddenly stepped forward and glared at Dongyu Shuer. "Who do you think you are? This is a matter between us siblings. Who are you to interfere?" Dongyu Shuer did not even look at the elder. "Sister, don't go too far." Dongyu Yuanliang's voice also turned cold. "Didn't you say so yourself? You let me sit wherever I want, so I'll sit where you are. There's nothing wrong with that." Dongyu Shuer shrugged and said nonchalantly. Dongyu Yuanliang's expression changed several times. He had wanted to take Dongyu Shuer down a notch, but she did not play by the rules and dared to humiliate him in public. "Sigh, brother, don't pretend in front of me." Don't you just want to take the credit? Dongyu Shuai could not be bothered to waste her breath on her second brother. Dongyu Yuanliang stared at her for a good while. Ha, he suddenly burst into laughter. It's good that you've laid your cards on the table. Since you know I want to take the credit, why did you obediently come into my pocket? My good imperial sister, are you stupid or what? Dongyu Yuanliang said with a sinister smile. The hall was immediately enveloped by a murderous aura. Everyone was extremely nervous. I'll be honest with you. Without my permission, you can forget about returning to the imperial capital for the rest of your life. Dongyu Yuanliang said hatefully. He completely dropped his hypocritical facade, as the merit was just far too great. It was a tremendous merit. If he were to achieve such a miraculous merit, it would not be impossible for the Dongyu Empire to change the crown prince. After all, the position of the imperial lord had always belonged to those who were capable. As for the East Moon Empire, the imperial lord was not the only one who had the final say. As long as there were enough people supporting him, even the imperial lord would have to lower his head. I've already guessed it. Don't you think it's hard for you to pretend? What a sanctimonious guy. Dongyu Shuai had a look of disgust. What are you waiting for? Take him down. Dongyu Yuanliang suddenly stood up from his throne and shouted at the people in the hall. Your Highness, I'm sorry. Chen Fang strode out. His elder brother was the city lord of Soaring Cloud City. In order to save his elder brother, he had no choice but to act. Chen Fang, you're courting death. Yang Feiyun went up to him. Both of them were in heaven realm. Before they even made a move, powerful auras radiated from their bodies. The surrounding people hurriedly retreated. Bam! Yang Feiyun directly kicked a table. The table flew up and smashed towards Chen Fang. The food on the table immediately scattered. Bam! Chen Fang smashed the table into pieces with a punch. He then took a step forward and threw another punch at Yang Feiyun. The force of the punch was like thunder, extremely powerful. Elder Zhao, don't take this girl's life. Dongyu Yuanliang reminded the old man beside him. Your Infinite Sword Sect, Sword Master Dongyu, Zhao Shenzhen? Dongyu Shuai suddenly exclaimed. She finally remembered who the old man was and immediately became nervous. Understood, Your Highness. The old man closed in on Dongyu Shuai as he spoke. Stop. At this moment, a figure blocked in front of Dongyu Shuai. Chapter 5691. You're the Infinite Sword Sect's Swordmaster Dongyu, Zhao Shenzhen? Dongyu Shuai recognized the black-robed old man beside Dongyu Yuanliang. She could not help but feel shocked and nervous. What? He's the legendary Swordmaster Dongyu? Everyone else in the hall was dumbfounded. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that they would see the most impressive cultivator of the sword in the East Moon Empire. Everyone's gazes landed on the unassuming black-robed old man. To them, he was a heavenly figure that they would not normally be able to come into contact with. This was Swordmaster Dongyu of the Infinite Sword Sect. Someone who could sit in the position of Swordmaster Dongyu of the Infinite Sword Sect was definitely the strongest among all the disciples of the Infinite Sword Sect in the East Moon Empire. That was because the Swordmaster Dongyu was the leader of the sects in the East Moon Empire. All the disciples of the Infinite Sword Sect had to listen to him. Of course, there were also the leaders of the Infinite Sword Sect in the Tyrannical Empire. The strongest person in the Infinite Sword Sect was the Swordmaster of the Tyrannical Empire. That was a formidable figure. My second brother actually received the support of the Swordmaster Dongyu. How was that possible? Why would the Swordmaster support my second brother? In the East Moon Empire, the Swordmaster Dongyu was in existence on equal footing with the East Moon Imperial Lord. Compared to a superforce like the Infinite Sword Sect, the East Moon Empire was at most a grasshopper that could be stomped to death. In the Infinite Sword Sect, there were countless people with the title of Swordmaster, and the Swordmaster Dongyu was only one of the countless swordmasters in the sect. Moreover, he was not even the strongest one. Even so, the Swordmaster Dongyu was an existence that Dongyu Shuai could only look up to. No wonder Dongyu Yuanliang dared to openly steal Shuai's credit. As it turned out, he had the support of the Swordmaster Dongyu. This was truly troublesome. Wang Zhon, hurry and escape. Hurry to the imperial capital and see my father. You have my token on you. Hurry and get reinforcements. Dongyu Shuai transmitted her voice to Ji Yufei clone Wang Zhon. You want this little guy to escape? Stop dreaming. Swordmaster Dongyu sneered. At such a close distance, Dongyu Shuai's voice transmission technique was completely useless. Swordmaster Dongyu could also sense Dongyu Shuai's spiritual will fluctuation. Spiritual communication? Dongyu Yuanliang sneered. Royal sister, I advise you to obediently hand over the East Moon bow and surrender. Otherwise, you won't be able to protect the people around you. Dongyu Yuanliang's tone was extremely cold. Are you threatening me? Dongyu Shuai was furious. How would I dare to threaten my father's most beloved sister? I'm just giving you a suggestion. Dongyu Yuanliang looked down at Dongyu Shuai with disdain. Wang Zhon, hurry up and run. Dongyu Shuai was truly panicking. In her eyes, Wang Zhon was no match for Swordmaster Dongyu at all. This guy was the greatest swordsman of the East Moon Empire. He was not someone the Overlord War God could compare to. Be it in terms of heritage, cultivation realm, or battle strength, Swordmaster Dongyu was miles ahead of the Overlord War God. Especially in terms of heritage, this Swordmaster Dongyu cultivated the Sword Dao cultivation technique of the Boundless Sword Sect, which was a top-notch Sword Dao cultivation technique. Just based on this alone, the Overlord War God could not be compared to Swordmaster Dongyu. The two of them were not on the same level at all. Although Wang Zhon might have the support of a mysterious sect, there were not many forces that could go against the Boundless Sword Sect in the East Pole. Lad, you'd better surrender obediently. You can't protect Her Highness. A middle-aged man sneered. That's right. That's the Lord Sword Master. Do you believe that I, Zhao Zhenting, can kill you with a single punch? Another middle-aged man's face was filled with disdain. Haha, is that so? Then I'll stand here. Come and kill me. Ji Yufei's clone hooked his finger at the middle-aged man called Zhao Zhenting with a look of contempt. You're courting death. Seeing that Ji Yufei's clone was actually disdainful of him, Zhao Zhenting took a step forward and threw a punch at Ji Yufei's clone. He moved like a fleeing rabbit, his punch was like lightning, and his aura was like a mountain. The moment Zhao Zhenting made his move, the surrounding people were shocked. An expert. This guy was definitely a heaven-ranked expert. In the East Moon Empire, heaven-ranked experts were already considered experts. One must know that in the East Moon Empire, the lord of a city was a heaven-ranked existence. In other words, in the East Moon Empire, only experts above heaven-ranked could sit in the position of a city lord. Even the smallest city was the same. Without a cultivation above heaven-ranked, how could one convince the masses? How could one suppress all the cultivators in the city? Only by being stronger than everyone else would others be obedient, afraid, and apprehensive. Sigh. Ji Yufei's doppelganger shook his head helplessly. Then, he pointed a finger at his opponent's incoming fist. In the next moment, everyone was dumbfounded, because Ji Yufei's clone actually used a finger to block Zhao Zhenting's lightning-fast punch. Seeing this, Swordmaster Dongyu could not help but frown. Dongyu Yuanliang's eyes even flashed with a cold light. Zhao Zhenting was his confidant, a peak heaven-ranked existence. To block a peak heaven-ranked punch with a finger, this was an unbelievable thing in everyone's eyes. You, roar. Zhao Zhenting was shocked and furious. He shook his right arm, and an even stronger force burst out from his body. Like an unstoppable flood, it surged into his right arm. In the next moment, an extremely violent fist force burst out from his right fist. This time, he used all his strength. However, no matter how ferocious and powerful his fist force was, it was still unable to shake off the finger on his fist. How is this possible? Zhao Zhenting was about to go crazy. Go to hell. Ji Yufei's clone grinned. The finger on Zhao Zhenting's fist shook, and Zhao Zhenting immediately screamed in pain as he was sent flying, crashing into a dozen tables. Wherever Zhao Zhenting passed, the surrounding people all dodged. Defeating a heaven-ranked expert with a flick of a finger. You're quite interesting, but you're fated to not be able to protect your master today. Zhao Shenzhen stood with his hands behind his back, looking indifferently at Ji Yufei's clone. Everyone was shocked once again. No one would have thought that the guard beside Dongyu Shuer was actually a hidden expert, and so young at that. This young man used a finger to defeat Zhao Zhenting, a peak heaven-ranked expert. Is that so? If you don't try, how do you know if you can protect her? Ji Yufei's clone said indifferently, still standing in front of Dongyu Shuer. Looks like you're courting death. Chapter 5692. This guy must be out of his mind. A mere guard actually dares to challenge Swordmaster Dongyu. Looks like he's tired of living. Sigh, we're about to witness the fall of a genius. Everyone in the hall did not think highly of Ji Yufei's clone. Many were mocking and disdainful. After all, Swordmaster Dongyu was the #1 expert of the sword in the East Moon Empire, a true sword god. I'll hold him back. You run. Dongyu Shuer said and was about to pull Ji Yufei's clone behind her. Even though Ji Yufei's clone had sent Zhao Zhenting, a peak heaven realm expert, flying with a single finger, Dongyu Shuer still did not think that Ji Yufei's clone could challenge Swordmaster Dongyu. That was because the difference between Swordmaster Dongyu and Zhao Zhenting was too great. One was like a dragon in the sky, while the other was like an ant on the ground. Ji Yufei's clone being able to defeat Zhao Zhenting with a single finger was enough to intimidate most of the people present. Even Dongyu Yuanliang was shocked. However, he was unable to intimidate Swordmaster Dongyu. Do you have so little confidence in me? Ji Yufei's clone was truly speechless. Is there any use in me having confidence in you? His Swordmaster Dongyu, someone who's on equal footing with my father. Dongyu Shuer was so anxious that she was about to cry. You seem to care a lot about me. Have you fallen for me? Ji Yufei's clone teased. You're still talking about this at a time like this? Dongyu Shuer was so depressed that she almost vomited blood. You're about to die, and you still have time to flirt. You're awesome. Dongyu Yuanliang gave Ji Yufei's clone a thumbs up. Sigh. Ji Yufei's clone sighed helplessly. Some people always think they can control the situation, but who would have thought that they're just a clown? Dongyu Yuanliang was enraged. What did you say? Seeing this, Dongyu Shuer panicked even more. You're still purposely provoking him at a time like this. Do you really want to die? Dongyu Shuer really didn't know why Wang Zhong still dared to provoke Dongyu Yuanliang, and still dared to ignore Swordmaster Dongyu. Could it be that he still had a trump card that could turn the tables? How was this possible? Swordmaster Dongyu was the swordmaster of the Infinite Sword Sect in the East Moon Empire. All the disciples of the Infinite Sword Sect in the East Moon Empire had to obey his orders. In the East Moon Empire, countless people practiced the sword, and the descendants of the nobles in the imperial court took pride in joining the Infinite Sword Sect. The Infinite Sword Sect's influence in the East Moon Empire could not be underestimated. Sometimes, they could even influence the decisions of the East Moon Imperial Lord. However, Swordmaster Dongyu rarely intervened in the imperial court's disputes, but this time, he actually stood on Dongyu Yuanliang's side. This was a huge blow to the Crown Prince's faction. Looks like I'm going to do something against my will today. Killing a genius isn't what I want. Swordmaster Dongyu shook his head and sighed. I say, you two really are birds of a feather. You're both hypocrites and sanctimonious people. Aren't you tired of living? Ji Yufei's clone shook his head and sighed as well. Swordmaster Dongyu was immediately enraged when he heard that. A powerful ripple of the power of Sword Dao immediately erupted from his body. Dongyu Yuanliang cried out. He was actually sent flying by the power of Sword Dao that erupted from Swordmaster Dongyu's body. The surrounding people also staggered from the impact of the power of Sword Dao. All the tables in the hall were overturned, and the entire hall was in a mess. Everyone was terrified. Every inch of space in the hall was filled with heart-palpitating sword chi. Everyone felt like they were in a formless forest of swords. It was as if Swordmaster Dongyu could kill anyone in the hall with a single thought. This was power that ruled over everything. What right did that puny guard have to fight Swordmaster Dongyu? The astonishing aura that erupted from Swordmaster Dongyu was simply too powerful. Everyone felt as though their souls were trembling. Haha, The sword master is mighty. The second prince Dongyu Yuanliang was surprised, overjoyed, and excited. He had found the right person this time. With sword master Dongyu's support, wouldn't the position of crown prince be a piece of cake for him? Sword master Dongyu was one of the few existences in the East Moon Empire who could influence the East Moon Imperial Lord. In the entire East Moon Empire, no one dared to ignore sword master Dongyu. Not even the East Moon Imperial Lord. Why aren't you kneeling? Sword master Dongyu stared at Ji Yufei's clone. He wanted to completely crush the little guy's confidence and crush him. TSK, there's no one in this world who can make me kneel. Ji Yufei's clone said in disdain. At this moment, Dongyu and Xuer'er had already knelt behind him. It could not be helped. Out of everyone present, only Ji Yufei's clone did not fear sword master Dongyu's surging aura. Before such a terrifying aura, he remained as calm as usual, without the slightest hint of panic. Very well. Even sword master Dongyu could not help but view Ji Yufei's clone in a different light at this moment. This little guy was truly powerful and nature-defying. But so what? No matter how nature-defying he was, he still had to die. To be able to kill off such a peerless genius, even sword master Dongyu felt excited. It had to be said, if such a formidable young cultivator were to grow up, he would surely become a world-shaking existence. You're too long-winded and naggy. You're indifferent to life and death. If you can't accept it, just fight. Understand? Ji Yufei's clone said and instantly disappeared on the spot. What? Sword master Dongyu was shocked. Bam! In the next moment, his nose received a heavy punch. His vision immediately darkened, and blood spurted out from his nose. His tall nose bridge collapsed. The crisp sound of bones breaking was heard by everyone present. Ji Yufei's doppelganger disappeared and reappeared in the same spot in an instant, giving the illusion that he hadn't moved at all. His movement technique and actions were simply too fast to be described with words. The entire place was silent. Everyone's eyeballs almost dropped to the ground, and their mouths were so wide open that one could stuff a duck's egg inside. Dongyu and Xuer'er were dumbfounded as well. Ji Yufei's clone actually gave sword master Dongyu a punch, causing his face to be covered in blood. Young man, sneak attack. Despicable. Sword master Dongyu was depressed. He did not expect his opponent to be so fast that he could not even dodge his opponent's punch. Sigh, you're still squeaking when you're inferior. Alright, watch carefully this time. Ji Yufei's clone said disapprovingly. Sword master Dongyu wiped the blood from his nose and harumphed coldly. He glared at Ji Yufei's clone and was about to attack. However, the moment he made his move, Ji Yufei's clone also made his move. Sword master Dongyu's right hand was only extended halfway. Before the condensed sword chi could even rush out from his hand, his vision darkened as he was directly punched. F***CK, sword master Dongyu was sent flying, slamming into the throne and shattering it into pieces. In the end, he even slammed into the wall behind the throne before coming to a stop. Countless cracks appeared on the wall, and a cloud of dust scattered down from the ceiling. Young man, you have no morals. Chapter 5693. Ji Yufei's clone knocked out Swordmaster Dongyu with 2 punches. The entire place was silent. How is this possible? The second prince of the East Moon Empire even stuttered and could not speak fluently. That was Swordmaster Dongyu, the greatest cultivator of the Way of the Sword in the East Moon Empire. His cultivation was definitely one of the best in the entire East Moon Empire. How could he be knocked out with 2 punches by a little guard beside Xuer'er? Everyone was dumbfounded. Everyone was shocked to the extreme. Everyone felt like they were in a dream. This scene was too surreal. How could the legendary best swordsman of the East Moon be knocked out by a little guy with just 2 punches? Dongyu Xuer'er pinched herself even harder. Ouch! Xuer'er was surprised and overjoyed. This was not an illusion, nor was it a dream. Wang Zhong really knocked out Swordmaster Dongyu with 2 punches. What Swordmaster Dongyu? The best swordsman of the East Moon? It turns out that he doesn't live up to his reputation. Ji Yufei's clone was very disdainful. This guy actually dared to call himself Swordmaster with such a cultivation. Was this a joke? Ji Yufei's doppelganger's 2 punches were actually just a single word, fast. He had displayed the word fast to the extreme. Whether it was his movement technique or the speed of his punches, they were all extremely fast. In the world of martial arts, only speed was unbeatable. This was not an empty saying. With the current martial realm of Ji Yufei's clone, he naturally knew the truth of the word fast. Swordmaster Dong Yu was actually not weak, but in front of Ji Yufei's clone, he could not make a move at all. Because he was not fast enough, he was defeated. Although Ji Yufei's doppelganger seemed to have won easily, it wasn't easy at all. Because if Swordmaster Dong Yu had a chance to make a move, he would be dead. But there were not so many IFS in this world. All of you, kneel. Ji Yufei's clone stood casually in the main hall. His gaze swept around, and everywhere his gaze passed, everyone could not help but lower their heads. However, no one was willing to kneel before Ji Yufei's clone. One should know that these people in the main hall were all people of status. How could they kneel so casually? However, they did not dare to attack Ji Yufei's doppelganger. Even Swordmaster Dong Yu was knocked unconscious by this guy called Wang Zhon with 2 punches. How could they dare to make a move? Wasn't attacking this guy the same as courting death? Although there were nearly 100 of Dong Yu Yuanliang's subordinates and confidants in the hall, none of them dared to make a move. They were all intimidated by the 2 punches from Ji Yufei's clone. Looks like you guys have a lot of backbone. That's right, a man has gold under his knees. I admire your backbone. Ji Yufei's avatar sighed helplessly. If they don't kneel, why are you sighing? Dong Yu Shuer said in amusement. If they don't kneel and submit, then I'll fulfill their wish and let them be heroes. Ji Yufei's clone explained. Everyone in the main hall panicked when they heard this. You're so naughty. If you want to kill these guys, then kill them. Why are you looking for excuses? Anyway, they're not my people. So what if they're killed? Haha, Dong Yu Shuer laughed out loud. Alright then. Ji Yufei's clone helplessly clenched his fists and was about to make a move. Bam! The next moment, everyone in the main hall unexpectedly knelt before Ji Yufei's clone at the same time. These guys were very shrewd. If they wanted to play the hero at this time, they would have to sacrifice themselves. Dong Yu Shuer was speechless. Dong Yu Yuanliang was depressed. The people in the main hall were terrified. Ji Yufei's clone was proud. Congratulations on subduing so many subordinates. Dong Yu Shuer was now filled with envy and hatred. These subordinates of Dong Yu Yuanliang were not ordinary people, because ordinary people were not worthy of his attention at all. Among these people, other than a dozen or so nobles of Flying Cloud City, the rest were all guests brought by Dong Yu Yuanliang from the East Moon royal capital. Zhao Zhunting, who was sent flying by a finger from Ji Yufei's clone, was one of Dong Yu Yuanliang's guests. This guy was also a bona fide peak heaven realm expert. In the main hall, among the guests brought by Dong Yu Yuanliang, the lowest cultivation was at the initial heaven realm, while the highest was a half-step divine realm expert. However, so what if he was a half-step divine realm expert? In the eyes of Ji Yufei's clone, he was just a slightly stronger ant among a group of ants. A powerful ant, he was also an ant. Second brother, where are you going? At that moment, Dong Yu Shuer flew up and landed in front of a sneaky fellow who was trying to slip away, blocking his way. This. Royal sister, this is all a misunderstanding. I really want to hold a banquet for you. You were able to capture the sky hegemonic war god and achieve such a great feat. I'm very happy for you. Although Dong Yu Yuanliang was flustered, he still forced himself to remain calm. Haha, is it really just a misunderstanding? You just said that you wanted to steal my credit. I didn't hear you wrong. Dong Yu Shuer was happy and excited. She was elated to see her second brother being humiliated. Royal sister, it's really a misunderstanding. How about I set up a new banquet to welcome you? Dong Yu Yuanliang said carefully. At this moment, he had already lost the upper hand. His most reliable swordmaster Dong Yu had been defeated by the little guard beside Dong Yu Shuer, and the group of guests were terrified. How could he still dare to challenge Dong Yu Shuer? Welcome your sister. Dongyu Shuai took a step forward and extended her right hand, directly slapping Dongyu Yuanliang's face. Pa! A resounding slap resounded in the hall, and the people kneeling on the ground lowered their heads even more. Dongyu Yuanliang spun twice on the spot from Shuai's slap. He staggered a few times before regaining his balance. He did not fall. In fact, Dongyu Yuanliang's cultivation was not as high as Shuai's. The reason why he could do as he pleased in the royal capital was because of the countless guests he kept. Among the hanger-ons he kept, there were a few outstanding ones. Perhaps it was because he had Swordmaster Dongyu's protection this time to steal Shuai's credit. Those powerful guests did not follow along. One had to admit that Dongyu Yuanliang's luck was truly terrible. You dare hit me? I'm your second brother. Dongyu Yuanliang was stunned by the slap, and roared at Shuai fiercely. Pa! I'm hitting you. Pa! So what if I hit you? Pa! Shouldn't someone who dares to bully his own sister be hit? Pa! How dare you steal my credit? Pa! I'm teaching you how to be a proper person. Pa! A despicable person like you wants to be the crown prince. Tui! Pa! If I let you sit on the throne, the entire East Moon Empire will be done for. Shuai directly slapped Dongyu Yuanliang over a dozen times, beating the handsome, elegant second prince into a pig's head. Does it feel good? Shuai did not forget to ask after slapping him. Fat,